When I arrived at my beach house that Friday afternoon, Chloe was already on the deck, giving orders to 3 workers as if she owned the place. She didn't greet me. She didn't even turn her head when the car stopped in front of the entrance. She just raised her hand, pointing toward the kitchen, and shouted something about the tile needing to arrive before Monday. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. I got out of the car slowly, watching. The front door was wide open. There were bags of cement stacked next to my pots of geraniums, the ones I planted 5 years ago with my own hands. The sound of a drill pierced the air from somewhere inside the house. My house. The house I bought after 40 years of working double shifts as a nurse at General Hospital. The house I paid for with my sweat after my husband died and left me with nothing but debts and broken promises. Chloe finally saw me. She smiled. That smile that always made me nervous. Too wide, too perfect. "Olga, I'm so glad you're here," she said, as if she were doing me a favor by acknowledging my presence on my own property. "Matthew is inside supervising the kitchen. You'll see. It's going to be beautiful." I didn't answer. I walked toward the entrance, feeling my 71-year-old legs protest with every step. I had driven 4 hours from the city specifically to rest, to listen to the waves, to be alone with my thoughts and my memories. I had dreamed about this week for months, planned every detail. The morning walks on the beach, the books I would read in the hammock, the silence I so desperately needed after an exhausting year. What I found inside took my breath away. The kitchen no longer existed. Or rather, it half existed. The cabinets I installed 3 years ago had been torn from the walls. The tile floor I had chosen so carefully was covered in dust and debris. The walls showed huge holes where the paintings from my Thursday afternoon art classes once hung. The refrigerator was in the middle of the living room, unplugged, its door ajar. The smell of dampness and fresh cement hit me like a slap. "What is this?" My voice came out calmer than I expected, almost a whisper. Matthew appeared from the hallway. My son, 45 years old, and still with that look of a child expecting Mom to fix everything. Except now there was something different in his eyes. Something hard. "Mom, it's a surprise." Well, it was a surprise. He wiped his hands on his pants, leaving gray dust marks. "We're remodeling. Chloe and I decided it's time to update everything. This kitchen was just too old." "You decided," I repeated. The word hung in the air between us. "Yes, and not just the kitchen." He walked toward the stairs and I followed him, feeling my heart begin to beat faster. We went up. Each step felt heavier than the last. When we reached the 2nd floor, and he opened the door to the master bedroom, my room, I had to hold onto the doorframe to keep from falling. The bed was gone. The armoire that belonged to my grandmother, that carved wooden heirloom that had survived 3 generations, had been moved who knows where. The walls were half painted, a mint green color I would have never chosen. There were tools everywhere, wires hanging from the ceiling, and a penetrating smell of fresh paint that made me dizzy. Where's my bed? Where are my things? We put them in the small room at the end of the hall, temporarily. Matthew wasn't even looking at me. He was checking something on his phone, typing a message. We need this master bedroom for something important." "For what?" The question came out with more force than I intended. That's when he said it. When he spoke the words that would change everything. "Chloe and I are going to move in here. Permanently. With Gloria, her mom, and her dad. They need a better place. And this house is big enough. We're making the rooms bigger, modernizing everything. It will be perfect for everyone." I stood motionless, paralyzed. The words bounced around in my head but couldn't form a coherent thought. Move in? Permanently? With Chloe's parents? This is my house. Matthew. I know, Mom. But it's also family property. It's time you shared it. You have your apartment in the city. You don't need 2 properties. We do. Chloe is tired of the city noise, and Gloria deserves to live her last years by the sea. She's 73, 2 years older than you. Don't you think she deserves it? There was so much twisted logic in his words that for a moment he almost convinced me. Almost. Until I saw the look on his face, that mix of determination and something that looked dangerously like indifference. He wasn't asking for my permission. He was informing me of a decision already made. You didn't consult me, because I knew you'd say no. You always say no when it comes to helping the family. You've always been like that, Mom, selfish with your things. The word cut through me like a knife. Selfish. Me, who worked until my hands trembled with exhaustion. Me, who paid for his entire college while he changed his major 3 times. Me, who lent him money for the down payment for his car 2 years ago, and he never paid me back. Selfish. I went down the stairs slowly. Each step was a conscious effort not to tremble, not to let myself fall. Chloe was still outside, now on the phone, laughing. I heard her say something about finally having the space we always wanted, and the old woman will just have to get used to it. I went into what was left of the living room. I sat in the only armchair they hadn't moved, that olive green armchair where my husband used to fall asleep on Sunday afternoons watching football. I closed my eyes. I breathed. 1, 2, 3 times. Deep. When I opened them, my gaze fell on my purse, on the vital documents folder I always carried with me. That folder where I kept all the important papers, deeds, wills, contracts, legal powers of attorney, everything perfectly organized and updated, because after 40 years in the healthcare system, I learned that life can change in a second, and it's better to be prepared. I took out my phone. I looked for a name in my contacts. Gregory, my lawyer for 15 years. The man who helped me with all the paperwork when I bought this house, when I updated my will, when I made sure every property was solely in my name after discovering the debts my husband hid for years. I dialed. 3 rings. 4. Olga, what a pleasure to hear from you. How are you? Gregory, I need you to come to the beach house tomorrow morning. Very early. Bring the property deeds and the will. All of it. There was a pause. Gregory knew me well. He knew that if I called him on a Friday afternoon asking for something urgent, it was because the situation demanded it. Did something happen? Yes, I replied, looking out at the deck where Chloe was still laughing, oblivious to what was about to happen. But it's not going to happen anymore. I hung up. I put the phone away. I sat there, in my armchair, surrounded by the disaster they had made of my refuge, my sanctuary, the place I had built with decades of effort. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront anyone that night. I just waited. Because I had learned something in 71 years of life. Revenge served hot burns the one who serves it, but revenge served with absolute cold, with surgical precision. That kind destroys without leaving a trace of the one who delivered it. Matthew came down an hour later. He told me he had prepared the small room for me, that my clothes were in boxes, because they needed the master closet for Chloe's and Gloria's things. He handed me a new key. It's for the room at the end of the hall, Mom. We put a lock on it so you can have privacy. I took the key without saying anything. I went up. The back room was barely 9 feet by 9. A single bed pushed against the wall, my things in cardboard boxes. A small window that looked out onto the parking area, not the sea. I lay down on the bed, fully dressed. I looked at the ceiling. I heard the waves in the distance, that sound that always calmed me, but that night only reminded me of everything they were trying to take from me. I closed my eyes and thought about tomorrow, about Gregory arriving at 6 in the morning, about the documents I would sign, about the calls I would make. For the first time in hours, I felt something close to peace. This was just the beginning. I woke up at 5 in the morning, not because I wanted to, but because my body had been accustomed to hospital shifts for decades. Outside, it was still dark. I could hear the sea. That constant murmur that used to calm me now sounded like a silent witness to everything I had lost in less than 24 hours. I got up slowly. My knees protested, as always. 71 years don't forgive. It doesn't matter how much yoga you do or how many vitamins you take. I opened one of the cardboard boxes where they had thrown my clothes. I found some gray pants and a white blouse. I dressed in silence, listening. The house was completely quiet. Matthew and Chloe were sleeping in the first-floor guest room, the one I always reserved for important visitors. Now they had taken it as if it were their own. I went down the stairs, avoiding the 3rd step, the one that always creaked. A habit from my years as a night nurse, when I learned to move without making a sound so as not to wake the patients. I reached the living room. The disaster was still there, of course. The debris, the dust, the refrigerator, still in the middle of everything. But there was something different. On the dining room table, that wooden table I bought at an antique market 10 years ago, there were papers. Lots of papers. I got closer. They were quotes, estimates from contractors, interior designers, furniture stores. I reviewed the numbers and felt the air leave my lungs. $120,000. That was the total cost of the remodel they had planned. $120,000 they planned to spend on my house, without asking me, without my authorization, without my signature. There was something else, a red folder under the quotes. I opened it. Inside, I found a legal document, half-filled, a power of attorney. My name was written at the top as the grantor, and Matthew's name as the appointee. The sections described permissions to sell, remodel, mortgage, and manage properties. The date was blank. The signature line was, too. I stared at that paper for long minutes. Then I understood the full plan. They didn't just want to move into my house. They wanted me to sign a document that would give them total control over all my properties, and they probably expected me to do it without reading, trusting my son blindly, as I had always done. I took out my phone and took pictures of the estimates, of the power of attorney, of every single page. Then I put everything back exactly as I had found it. At 5:40, Gregory arrived. I heard his truck park outside. I went out before he could knock on the door. The sky was beginning to lighten with orange and pink hues. It was cold. I wrapped myself in the sweater I had brought. "Good morning, Olga." Gregory was 60 years old. Perfectly combed gray hair and that serious expression of someone who has seen too many families destroyed by money. He was carrying a brown leather briefcase. What happened? I told him everything, every detail. As I spoke, he opened his briefcase and took out documents. The same documents I had signed years ago when I decided that no one would ever control my life or my assets again. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Gregory said when I finished. "Your son and his wife began remodeling work on your property without your written consent. They are planning to move in permanently without your authorization, and you found a power of attorney they expect you to sign." "That's right. Do you know what this means legally?" "You tell me." "It means they have committed trespassing, property damage without the owner's authorization, and possibly attempted fraud if they plan to have you sign that power of attorney under false pretenses." He took more papers out of his briefcase. "I have the deeds right here. Everything is solely in your name. Neither Matthew nor anyone else has any legal right to this house. I can draft an immediate eviction order. They have to be out in 48 hours. Do it, Olga, think about it. He's your son. I've already thought about it. All night. During every minute I spent locked in that tiny room while they planned to steal what took me 40 years to build. My voice didn't tremble. Do it, Gregory. Now." He nodded. He took his laptop out of his briefcase. For the next hour, as the sun finished rising and the house remained silent, Gregory drafted the documents. Eviction order. Complaint for damages to private property. Request for an injunction to stop the work. Everything with the official seal, with the laws cited, with the deadline set. "I need a process server to deliver this personally," I said. "Today. This morning. I can make the calls. I have contacts at the courthouse. If I explain that it's urgent, they can come before noon. No, I want it to be at 6 in the morning, tomorrow, Saturday." Gregory looked at me with that expression he reserved for his most determined clients. "You want them to be woken up with the news. Exactly like they ruined my vacation by arriving unannounced and destroying my house. I want them to feel that same invasion, that same lack of control. It can be done. But Olga, when this happens, there's no going back. Family relationships. There's no family relationship left to save," I interrupted him. "That ended when my son called me selfish for not wanting to give away what cost me a lifetime to earn. When his wife spoke about me as if I were a burden. When they planned to make me sign documents to take away control of my properties." Gregory was silent for a moment. Then he closed his laptop. "All right, I'll make the calls. The officers will be here tomorrow at 6 o'clock sharp. I'm also going to notify the construction company to stop all work immediately or face legal charges. And I'm going to request an inspection of the damages to calculate the compensation Matthew will have to pay you. Compensation? For the material damages. The destroyed cabinets, the damaged floor, the walls. Everything has a cost. Illegally, he is responsible for paying for it. Something stirred inside me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't satisfaction. It was simply the certainty that I was doing the right thing, that after a lifetime of putting myself at the end of the line, after years of sacrificing for others, I was finally choosing myself. Do it all. Gregory left at 7:30. I asked him to use the side entrance so Matthew and Chloe wouldn't see him. I didn't want them to suspect anything yet. I went back into the house. I went up to the small room. I sat on the bed and waited. At 8 o'clock, I heard movement downstairs, footsteps, voices. Matthew on the phone with someone, probably the workers, giving them instructions for the day. Chloe laughing at something. The sound of the coffee maker. I went down at 8:30. When I entered the makeshift kitchen they had set up in a corner of the living room, Chloe was pouring coffee into one of my favorite mugs, that white ceramic one with yellow flowers I bought on my last trip to Asheville. "Good morning. Olga, did you sleep well?" she asked without really looking at me. Focused on her phone. Perfectly, I lied. Matthew walked in. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt and that expression of someone who was fast asleep 5 minutes ago. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Tell me. We need you to sign some papers. It's to speed up the work, so the contractors can make changes without having to consult you on every detail. It's just a formality, but legally they need your authorization as the owner." There it was, the moment I had anticipated. I walked over to the table where the papers from last night, still Saturday. I picked up the red folder. I opened it. I took out the blank power of attorney. "Are you talking about this?" Matthew's expression changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. Surprise, discomfort. Then he tried to smile. "Yes, exactly. It's just to make everything easier. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about." I held the paper in front of him. "This isn't an authorization for work. Matthew, this is a full power of attorney that would give you control over all my properties. To sell, mortgage, manage, everything." "Mom, it's not like that. The lawyer said it was necessary to." "What lawyer?" Silence. Chloe stopped looking at her phone. Matthew froze. "There is no lawyer, is there?" My voice remained calm, dangerously calm. "You drafted this yourselves. You downloaded a template from the internet and thought I would sign without reading because I trust you. It's not like that. I'm not signing anything. And I want the work to stop. Today." "Mom, we've already invested money in this. We've already paid deposits." "With what money, Matthew?" "Tell me, with what money did you pay for $120,000 in renovations?" His face turned pale. "How do you know that amount?" "Because unlike you, I do read the papers that are in my own house." Chloe intervened then. Her voice had lost all its sweetness. "Olga, don't be so dramatic. We just want to improve the house. Make it more modern, more livable. When Gloria and my dad move in, they're going to need comforts. No one is moving in here. That's not for you to decide alone." "Yes, it is. It's my house." Chloe slammed the mug down on the table. "You are incredibly selfish. You have 2 properties, and you refuse to share one. Gloria is older than you, she has health problems, and she deserves to live in a decent place. Then you buy a house for Gloria. We can't afford a house on the beach. Not all of us were lucky enough to get properties when they were cheap. It wasn't luck. It was work. 40 years of work." I turned and went up the stairs. I could hear them talking downstairs, their voices rising, arguing about what to do now, about how to convince me. I didn't care. I went into the small room. I locked the door. I sat on the bed and looked at the ceiling. Tomorrow at 6 in the morning, everything would change. And for the first time in a long time, I was going to be the one in control of that change. The rest of Friday passed in a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Matthew and Chloe spoke in low voices whenever I appeared. The workers arrived at 10 in the morning, and Chloe had to tell them to wait, that there was a small problem with the permits. The men stood outside, smoking, looking at their phones, getting paid by the hour to do nothing. I stayed in my room almost all day. I read, or at least I tried to. The words blurred on the page. My mind was elsewhere, going over every detail of what was to come. Gregory had sent me a text confirming everything. The process servers would arrive at exactly 6 in the morning on Saturday. They would bring the eviction order, the cease and desist for the construction, and the complaint documents. All legal, all irreversible. At 3 in the afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. It was Matthew. "Mom, can we talk?" It wasn't a question. I opened the door. He came in and sat on the only chair in the room, an old wooden chair that used to be in the garage. He looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes. "I know you're upset," he began. "And I get it. We should have consulted you before starting the work. That was a mistake." I stayed standing, leaning against the wall, waiting. "But you have to understand our situation. Chloe and I have been living in that small apartment for years. We can't have kids there. There's no space. And Gloria really is in poor health. The doctors say the sea air would help her respiratory problems. We thought it would be perfect, that everyone would win." "Everyone wins when I'm locked in a 9x9 room?" I asked. "It wouldn't be forever, just until you got used to it. Then we could make a schedule, take turns. You come some months, we come other months. It's my house, Matthew. There don't have to be turns, but it'll be mine someday, right? When you're gone, this house is going to be my inheritance. Why not start enjoying it now?" Those words hung in the air. When I'm gone, as if he was just waiting for me to die so he could take what was mine. As if my life was just an obstacle between him and his plans. "Get out of my room," I said quietly. "Mom, just be reasonable. Get out, now." He stood up. There was something in his eyes, something between frustration and contempt. He left without closing the door. I closed it behind him and locked it again. I barely ate dinner that night. I went down at 8, made some tea, and went back up. From my window, I could see Matthew's truck, parked. The lights in the house were still on. I heard their voices, muffled, constant, planning, always planning. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I checked the clock every hour. 11 at night, 12, 1 in the morning, 2. At 3, I finally fell into a restless sleep filled with confusing images. My husband, the house when I first bought it. Empty and full of possibilities. Matthew as a child, before he became this. I woke up at 5:30. Half an hour before the officers were due to arrive. I dressed with care. Black pants, gray blouse, the sweater my sister gave me 2 Christmases ago. I brushed my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 71 years old. Wrinkles around her eyes, age spots on her hands. But she also had something else. Determination, strength, dignity. I went downstairs. The house was dark and silent. I made myself a coffee in the provisional coffee maker they had set up. I sat in the olive green armchair and waited. At 6 o'clock sharp, I heard the vehicles. 2 SUVs parked in front of the house. I saw the lights through the window. 4 people got out, 2 uniformed process servers and 2 witnesses, as required by law. They were carrying clipboards, cameras, electronic tablets. I opened the door before they knocked. "Good morning. I was expecting you." The senior officer, a man in his 50s with a gray mustache, nodded. "You are Mrs. Olga, the owner of this residence?" "Yes. We have legal documents that must be served to a Mr. Matthew and a Miss Chloe." "Are they on the property?" "They're sleeping upstairs." "I need you to wake them, please. The notification must be done in person." I went up the stairs. My heart was beating fast, but my steps were firm. I reached the guest room where they were sleeping. I knocked on the door. Once, twice, 3 times. "What is it?" Matthew's voice was groggy, half asleep. "I need you to come downstairs. There are people here who need to talk to you." "What? What time is it?" 6 in the morning. "Get down here. Now." I heard movement inside. Murmurs. Chloe asking what was happening. I waited upstairs until they came out, both in pajamas, hair disheveled, with expressions of confusion and annoyance. We went downstairs together. When Matthew saw the officers in the living room, he stopped cold. "What is this?" The officer stepped forward. "Are you Matthew, son of Mrs. Olga?" "Yes, but I have an eviction order issued by the civil court. You and anyone under your responsibility have 48 hours to vacate this property. Here is the official documentation." He handed him a thick envelope. Matthew took it with trembling hands. He opened it. He started to read. His face went from confusion to disbelief, and finally to rage. "This is insane. Mom, what did you do? I'm protecting what's mine. I'm your son. And this is my house. A house you decided to destroy without my permission." Chloe had started to cry. Not silent tears, but dramatic, exaggerated sobs. "I can't believe this. How can you do this to us? We were going to bring Gloria here. We promised her a better life." "That's not my problem," I said, and the words came out colder than I expected. The officer continued. "I also have a cease and desist order for the construction. Any remodeling, building, or modification must stop immediately. Mrs. Olga has filed a complaint for damages to private property. An inspector will be here on Monday to assess the damages and determine the corresponding compensation." "Compensation?" Matthew stared at me as if he didn't know me. "You're going to sue us? Your own family?" "There is no family anymore," I replied. "That was clear when I found the power of attorney you planned to have me sign. When you called me selfish for not wanting to give away what took me 40 years to get, this is a mistake. We can fix this. We can talk. There's nothing left to talk about. You have until Monday at 6 in the morning to be out." The officers finished serving all the documents. They took photographs of the house, of the damages, of the incomplete work. They had Matthew and Chloe sign the acknowledgments of service. Everything was documented, legal, irreversible. When they left, Matthew stood in the middle of the living room, holding the papers, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. Hate. Pure hate. "You're going to regret this," he said in a low, tense voice. "I don't think so. Everyone is going to know what kind of mother you are. What kind of heartless person throws her own son out onto the street? You're not on the street. You have your apartment. You have your life. The only thing you don't have is my house." Chloe was still crying, now sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. "We promised Gloria. What are we going to tell her? We already sold some of our furniture to pay the deposits for the work." Something in that sentence caught my attention. "You sold your furniture to pay for the work?" Matthew didn't answer. He looked away. "With what money did you plan to finish the remodeling?" "The estimates total $120,000. Silence. Then I understood. They never had the money. They had planned to start the work and then convince me to pay, or to sign that power of attorney so they could mortgage my house and get the money. It had all been a trap from the beginning. "Get out of my sight," I said finally. "Pack your things and leave today. I don't want to see you here one more minute." "We have 48 hours, Matthew spat. "Legally, yes, but morally, you're no longer welcome here." I went up to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and finally, after 2 days of holding back, I let the tears come. I wasn't crying for them. I was crying for the family I thought I had, one that never really existed. I didn't leave my room all day. I listened to the comings and goings of Matthew and Chloe, their heavy footsteps up and down the stairs, the sound of boxes being dragged, doors slamming. Sometimes I heard Chloe on the phone, her sharp voice cutting through the walls. Words like cruel, unfair, ungrateful old woman reached me in fragments. I didn't care. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my peace over the approval of others. And even though it hurt, even though I felt that emptiness in my chest that comes with final goodbyes, I also felt something else, something light, freedom. At 5 in the afternoon, there was a knock on my door. It was Matthew again. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Please." His voice sounded different, softer, almost pleading. I didn't answer. I heard him wait a few seconds and then walk away. His footsteps faded down the stairs. When it got dark, I finally went downstairs. The house was strangely silent. I went to the makeshift kitchen, made a cup of tea, and sat in my armchair. From there, I could see Matthew's truck loaded with suitcases and boxes. Chloe was sitting in the passenger seat, staring at her phone, illuminated by the screen's glow. Matthew came out of the house with another box. He saw me in the armchair. He stopped. "We're almost done. We're leaving tonight." I nodded without saying anything. Chloe is devastated. Her parents are, too. We had to tell Gloria the house wasn't available after all. She cried for an hour. "It was never available, Matthew. Because it was never yours to begin with." You know what the worst part of all this is? He took a step closer. "I thought you were different. I thought, despite everything, my mother was a good person. But it turns out, you only care about yourself. I only care about myself." I set the teacup on the table. "I worked double shifts for years to pay for your college. I lent you $30,000 for your car that you never paid back. I paid for your wedding when you said you didn't have enough. And now, because I won't let you steal my house, I'm selfish. We weren't stealing anything. We just wanted to share. Sharing is when you ask permission. What you did was an invasion. Whatever you want to call it." He lifted the box again. "But don't think this is over. Everyone is going to know what you did. Your friends, the neighbors, the family. They're going to know what kind of person you are. Tell them whatever you want, Matthew. The truth always comes out." He left without another word. 10 minutes later, I heard the truck's engine. I watched the taillights disappear down the road. And then, for the first time in 2 days, the house was completely silent. My house. My space. Mine again. I stayed up late, walking through the rooms. The master bedroom, torn apart, with half-painted walls and holes in the drywall. The kitchen without cabinets, with wires hanging and the floor torn up. I mentally calculated the damages. Not just the cost to repair, but the time, the effort to find the right workers, to supervise every detail. But it was worth it. It was all worth it if it meant getting my peace back. On Sunday, I woke to the sound of the waves. I opened all the windows. I let the fresh sea air pour in. I called Gregory. "How are you?" he asked. "Better. They're gone. Matthew and Chloe. Left last night. They didn't wait the 48 hours. Good. The inspector is coming tomorrow, Monday, at 9. He'll document everything. Then we can proceed with the lawsuit for damages. How much do you think it will be?" Hard to say without the assessment, but based on what you told me, between $15,000 and $20,000 easily. Those custom cabinets you had were expensive. The tile floor, too. Not to mention the structural damage to the walls. $20,000. An amount Matthew didn't have. A debt that would follow him for years. Part of me felt a pang of guilt for a second. But then I remembered the power of attorney, the plans to mortgage my house without my knowledge, the way they spoke of me, as if I were a burden. The guilt vanished. "Proceed with everything, Gregory. I want them to pay for every last cent." "I will. I also want to recommend something. Update your will. Now, make everything crystal clear and specific. It's all already in the name of the Retired Nurses Foundation." "I know, but let's add stronger clauses, specifying that no family member can contest the will, that any attempt to do so will result in automatic disqualification. There are legal ways to armor plate your wishes. Do it, whatever it takes." I hung up and went out to the deck. The sea was calm, glittering under the morning Sunday. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to just be there, breathing, existing without tension. My phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated but answered. "Olga?" It was a woman's voice, older, with an accent similar to mine, but rougher. "Who's speaking?" "It's Gloria, Chloe's mom." My body tensed immediately. "How did you get my number?" "That doesn't matter. I need to talk to you, woman to woman, mother to mother. We have nothing to talk about. Please, just hear me out for 1 minute." Her voice sounded tired, weak. "I know what happened. I know Matthew and Chloe made mistakes. But I had nothing to do with that. I'm just a sick woman who dreamed of living her last years by the sea. I'm sorry for your situation, but that's not my responsibility. I'm 73 years old. Heart problems. Asthma. The doctors say the city air is killing me. When Chloe told me they had gotten a house on the beach, I thought it was a miracle. I sold my few things. I told my friends I was moving. And now? And now you have to face the fact that your daughter lied to you, that she promised you something that was never hers to give. You are very cruel. No, Gloria, I'm realistic. And I'm tired of people asking me to sacrifice myself for problems they created. Someday you're going to be old, sick, in need, and then you'll understand. I am already old, Gloria. I'm already at the age where illnesses arrive unannounced. But the difference is, I worked my whole life so I could take care of myself, so I wouldn't have to depend on anyone or ask anyone to give me what isn't theirs. I hung up before she could reply. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from rage. How dare Gloria call me, try to make me feel guilty for not giving away my life savings. The phone rang again, the same number. I didn't answer. It rang 5 more times over the next hour. Then the calls stopped, but the texts began. Gloria, Chloe, even numbers I didn't recognize. All with the same tone. Accusations of cruelty, of coldness, of selfishness. Long, dramatic messages about broken families, shattered dreams, sick old women without a home. I blocked every number, each one, without reading the full messages, without responding. That night, as I ate dinner alone on the deck watching the sunset, my phone vibrated with a notification. Facebook. I had been tagged in a post. It was from Chloe. I opened it. It was a photo of Gloria, sitting in what looked like a hospital bed, wearing an oxygen mask. The text read, "My mother is hospitalized with an asthma attack. All from the stress of losing the home we promised her, thanks to the cruelty of certain people who only think of themselves. Money and property won't keep you company when you're all alone." It already had 50 comments, mostly from people I didn't know, Chloe's friends, expressing outrage, offering support, cursing the heartless woman. I stared at the post for long minutes. Part of me wanted to respond, to defend my side, to explain everything. But then I remembered something a colleague from the hospital once told me. The people who need to create public drama are the ones who have no valid private arguments. I closed the app without commenting, without liking, without sharing, without responding. Absolute silence, because I knew something Chloe didn't understand yet. The truth doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs time and patience. And I had both. On Monday at 9 o'clock sharp, the inspector arrived. He was a man in his 40s, thin, with thick glasses and a tablet in his hand. He introduced himself as Adrian, a state-certified civil engineer. He had a professional camera hanging from his neck and a tape measure on his belt. "Good morning, Mrs. Olga. I'm here for the damage assessment." I let him in. I watched as he went through each room with almost obsessive meticulousness. He took photos from multiple angles. He measured every hole in the walls. He checked the exposed electrical wires. He took non-stop notes on his tablet. He spent the most time in the kitchen. He ran his fingers along the edges where the cabinets had been ripped out. He inspected the water and gas connections left exposed. He took out a moisture meter and ran it along the walls. "There's structural damage here," he said, pointing to a corner. "When they removed the cabinets, they damaged the waterproofing. There's already moisture seeping in. This will require specialized work. How serious is it? If it's not treated soon, in 6 months you'll have mold all over this wall. And repairing mold is 3 times more expensive than preventing the seepage." He continued to the master bedroom. The damage there was even more obvious. The walls were not only half-painted, but they had removed parts of the drywall to modernize according to Matthew's plans. Now there were areas where you could see the bare, vulnerable, porous brick. "Do you have the original invoices for the materials you installed?" Adrian asked. "Yes, I have everything filed." "Perfect. That will help me calculate the exact replacement cost." We spent 3 full hours on the inspection. When he finished, Adrian sat with me at the dining room table and opened a document on his tablet. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Olga. The damage is considerable. It's not just a matter of reinstalling what they took out. There is structural damage that needs to be repaired first. Moisture seepage, dangerously manipulated electrical connections, gas pipes installed that violate building codes. Give me a number. $32,000. That's my conservative estimate to repair everything to its original state. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $32,000. More than double what Gregory had estimated. Are you sure? Completely. And that's not counting the cost of additional inspections the county will require now that structural damage has been documented. It could easily go up to $35,000. I leaned back in my chair. $35,000. Matthew could never pay that. He worked in sales. He made decent money but lived on the edge, always spending more than he had. This would ruin him financially for years. I'm going to send the full report to your lawyer today, Adrian continued, with all the photographs, measurements, and the cost breakdown. If you're going to proceed legally, this is solid evidence. After he left, I called Gregory. $35,000, I said when he answered. There was silence on the other end. That's much more than we thought. I know. Olga, I need to ask you something important. Do you really want to go all the way with this? $35,000 is an amount that could financially destroy Matthew. We're talking about wage garnishments affecting his credit history for years. Are you asking me to forgive him? I'm asking if you're prepared for the consequences, not just for him, but for you. This is going to get public. There will be a trial. It will be in public records. People are going to have opinions. Let them. All right. Then we'll proceed. I'll file the suit this week. Matthew will be served in about 10 days. I hung up and went for a walk on the beach. The sun was high, burning. I walked for an hour, letting the water lap at my feet, feeling the hot sand under my soles. I tried to order my thoughts, my emotions, but everything was a whirlwind. Was I being cruel? Probably. Was I being fair? Absolutely. When I got back to the house, there was a car parked outside. A brown sedan I recognized immediately. It was Lydia, my best friend of 30 years, my colleague from the hospital. She was sitting on the deck, waiting. She was 72, with stark white hair cut in a modern style, and that look of concern I knew so well. Lydia, what are you doing here? I heard what happened. Well, part of the story, at least. Chloe has been posting all over social media, and you know how it is. Everyone is talking. I sat down next to her. What is she saying? That you threw your son out on the street? That your daughter-in-law's mother is hospitalized from the stress? That you preferred your house to be empty rather than have your family close? She paused. But I know you. And I know that if you got to this point, it's because you had your reasons. I told her everything, every detail. The work without permission, the power of attorney, the plans to mortgage my house, the way they spoke to me. Everything. Lydia listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she sighed deeply. You did the right thing. You think so? Olga, I've spent 30 years watching you sacrifice for that boy. You paid for his education, his debts, his wedding. And now they wanted your house. Where does it end? When is it enough? But he's my son, and you're his mother, not his personal bank, not his property. You have a right to have boundaries. People hate me on social media. People on social media hate everything. Tomorrow, they'll be outraged about something else. But you have to live with your decisions, not them. Lydia stayed all afternoon. We made coffee, ate cookies she had brought, and talked about everything and nothing. Her grandkids, my plans to fix the house, the new series we were both watching. When she left at dusk, she hugged me tight. You're not alone in this. Remember that. That night, I checked Facebook again. Chloe's post now had 200 comments. It had grown, gone viral in our local circles. People sharing stories of families destroyed by greed, comparing my case to others, opining without knowing the facts. There were even screenshots circulating. Someone had found my profile and shared my photo, my full name. The comments on those posts were worse. Bitter old woman, I hope she dies alone. That's the face of evil. For the first time, I felt real fear. Not of Matthew or Chloe, but of this anonymous mob of people who hated me without knowing me, who had decided I was the monster in this story, based solely on Chloe's manipulated version. I thought about responding, about posting my own version, showing the photos of the damage, explaining the power of attorney, defending my name. But then I remembered something else Lydia once told me. Never stoop to fight with people who bought tickets to see you fall. I closed the app. I deactivated my Facebook account completely. If people wanted to believe lies, that was their problem. I knew the truth, and the people who really mattered knew it too. On Tuesday, Gregory sent me a text. Lawsuit filed. Matthew will be served on Thursday, 2 days. In 2 days, my son would receive legal documents suing him for $35,000. In 2 days, this would stop being family drama and become an official legal matter, with case files and court dates and real consequences. I made myself a chamomile tea and went out to the deck. The stars were incredibly bright that night. The full moon was reflected on the water, creating a path of silver light. I thought about my husband, dead for 15 years. I thought about everything we had planned for our old age, plans that evaporated when the hidden debts came to light after his funeral. I thought about how I had to rebuild my life from scratch at 56, working extra shifts, saving every penny, finally buying this house with my own effort. No one gave me anything. No one made my path easy. And now that I finally had something of my own, something I earned with my sweat, I was supposed to just hand it over without a fight. No, never again. On Thursday afternoon, Matthew called. I didn't answer. He called 4 more times. Then the texts came. I got the lawsuit. I can't believe you went this far. $35,000. Mom, do you know what that means? I'm going to lose everything. There's still time to fix this. Drop the lawsuit and let's talk. I didn't answer any of them. I blocked his number, too. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no waking up every hour, no tightness in my chest. Because I had finally understood something fundamental. Choosing myself didn't make me a bad person. It made me free. The following week was strangely quiet. No calls, no texts, no drama. It was as if, after the lawsuit, everyone understood there was no turning back. Or maybe they were just regrouping, planning their next move. I hired a construction company to start the repairs. The foreman, a man named Vince, around 60, with huge hands and a gravelly voice, inspected the damage and whistled low. Whoever did this had no idea what they were doing. Look here. They cut a load-bearing wire without even shutting off the breaker. They could have started a fire. How long will it take to fix everything? 6 weeks, minimum, maybe 8. We have to wait for the county to approve the structural repair permits before we can start on the cosmetic stuff. Go ahead, do what you have to do. The workers arrived the following Monday. The sound of drills and hammers filled the house again. But this time it was different. This time, I was in control. This time, every decision went through me. Vince consulted me on everything. The paint color, the style of the cabinets, the type of tile for the floor. I showed him photographs of how it was before, and he promised to leave it better than the original. It's going to be beautiful, Mrs. Olga. You'll see. 2 weeks after filing the suit, Gregory called. Matthew wants to negotiate. Negotiate what? He's offering to pay $10,000 if you drop the lawsuit. He says it's all he can get. The debt is $35,000. I know. But he argues he doesn't have any more. That he had to borrow from a bank to scrape together that $10,000. That if you insist on the full amount, he'll have to declare bankruptcy. That's not my problem. Legally, no. But Olga, I need you to understand something. If he goes bankrupt, you won't see a cent. On the other hand, if you accept the $10,000 now, at least you recover something. It's not about the money, Gregory. It was never about the money. I know, but I had to present the offer. It's my obligation as your lawyer. Tell him no. Either he pays the $35,000 or we'll see him in court. There was a long pause. All right, I'll communicate your decision. After hanging up, I kept thinking. $10,000. It was more than I expected Matthew to be able to pull together honestly. He had probably borrowed from everyone he knew, hawked things, made desperate financial maneuvers. But accepting that amount would be like saying what he did was okay, that with a little money, he could buy forgiveness. He could erase the invasion, the disrespect, the plans to steal control of my life. No, this was about more than money. It was about dignity. 3 days later, Lydia came to visit again. This time, she brought Clara, another friend from the hospital, a petite woman of 68 with the energy of someone of 40. "I came to see how the repairs are going," Clara said, inspecting the kitchen. "It looks good, professional. Vince and his team are excellent." We sat on the deck with coffee. Clara looked at the sea for a long moment before speaking. "You know, your story made it all the way to the hospital." "What? The young nurses are talking about you?" At first, many of them believed the social media version, but then some of the ones who worked with you started talking about what you were really like. Your work ethic, your dedication, the years you sacrificed. And what are they saying now? That you did the right thing, that they wish they had your courage to set boundaries with their own families. Clara took a sip of coffee. One of them, Maribel, do you remember her? She said her son took all her savings for a business that never worked out. Now she has to work extra shifts at 70 because she can't retire. I didn't know that. Nobody knows. Because she's ashamed. But you have nothing to be ashamed of, Olga. What you did was defend yourself, Lydia added. And the narrative on social media has started to change, too. Someone shared screenshots of conversations where Chloe admitted they were planning the work without your permission. I don't know who it was, but it's going viral. What? Yes? Apparently, someone close to them got fed up with the lies and leaked real messages. Now people are starting to question Chloe's version. That night, I searched online, even though I had sworn not to check social media again. The screenshots were everywhere. WhatsApp conversations where Chloe told a friend, "The old woman won't even find out until it's already done. By then, she won't be able to do anything." Another message where Matthew wrote, "My mom will just have to accept it. After all, it's all going to be mine someday anyway." The comments had changed drastically. Now people were apologizing for judging me. Others were criticizing Chloe for being manipulative. Some were even sharing their own stories of abusive family members. But the most shocking thing was a post from Gloria, Chloe's mother. A long message where she admitted she was never really hospitalized, that the photo was old from another emergency last year, that Chloe had convinced her to use it to generate pity, that she now regretted lending herself to that manipulation. "I should not have allowed my daughter to use my health to attack another woman," Gloria wrote. Olga had every right to protect her property. We were wrong. I read that message 3 times. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel victory. I just felt a deep exhaustion. All this circus, all this public drama, all this pain could have been avoided if, from the very beginning, Matthew had just had the decency to ask me instead of deciding for me. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number. This time, I answered. "Mrs. Olga?" It was a young woman's voice. Professional. "Yes, I'm a reporter from the local paper. We're doing a story on financial family abuse, and we'd like to interview you about your case." "No, thank you. It would be an opportunity to tell your side directly. Many seniors are going through similar situations, and your story could help them. My story is not for public consumption, and the people who needed to know my side already do. Are you sure? The article is going to be published anyway. It would be better if—" I hung up. I didn't need public validation. I didn't need to be a trend or an example or an inspiration. I just needed my peace. That night, Gregory called me again. Matthew raised his offer to $15,000. He says it's the absolute most he can get without completely ruining himself. What do you recommend as my lawyer? As your lawyer, I'm telling you that accepting guarantees you'll receive something. Going to trial is a long, expensive process, and there's no guarantee you can collect the full judgment even if you win. And as my friend? Gregory sighed. As my friend, I'm telling you that this young man needs to learn that actions have consequences. That he can't destroy someone's property, not even his mother's, and get away with it by paying a fraction of the damage. Then we're going to trial. All right. The date is set for 5 weeks from now. I'm going to need you there, testifying. It's going to be hard, I know, but I've already crossed the point of no return. There's no easy way back. There never was, Olga. From the moment you decided to defend yourself, there was only one way. Forward. I hung up and looked out the window. The repair work was moving along well. The kitchen was starting to take shape again. The master bedroom had smooth walls, ready for paint. Soon, the house would be whole again. Better than before, actually. And I would be whole, too. Different, scarred, but whole. Because I had learned something fundamental in these months. Sometimes loving means letting go. And sometimes protecting yourself means being willing to be called cruel. The price of dignity has always been high, but the cost of losing it is infinitely higher. The 5 weeks leading up to the trial passed in a strange mix of routine and anxiety. The repairs progressed perfectly. Vince and his team worked with meticulous precision. The kitchen ended up even better than before, with solid, honey-toned wood cabinets and cream-colored granite countertops. The master bedroom recovered its essence, with walls painted in a soft peach color that caught the morning light. But while the house was healing, I was preparing for the final battle. Gregory came by every week to go over my testimony. He asked me the questions Matthew's lawyer would likely ask. The difficult ones, the personal ones, the ones designed to make me look like the villain. Is it true your son visited you regularly before this? Yes. And that you promised the house would be his inheritance one day? I said that eventually everything would be his when I died. Not that he could take it while I was still alive. But he's your only son. Don't you think it's cruel to sue him for improving a property that will be his anyway? He wasn't improving. He was destroying. And he was doing it without permission, planning to take away control of my own assets. Gregory would nod after each answer. Good. Keep that tone. Calm, but firm. Don't let them provoke you emotionally. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I stayed on the deck until 3 in the morning, listening to the waves, watching the stars, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The years of sacrifice, the broken promises, the final invasion that shattered any illusion of a functional family. At 6 in the morning, I got up and dressed with care. Black pants, an ivory-colored blouse, a gray blazer that made me look professional and serious. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. No jewelry except my wedding ring, the one I had never taken off despite everything. Gregory picked me up at 8. The courthouse was 2 hours away. We spoke little during the drive. He reviewed documents on his tablet. I stared out the window, watching the landscape pass by, preparing myself mentally. We arrived at 10. The courthouse was an old concrete building, with hallways that smelled of dampness and old paper. The courtroom was on the 2nd floor. When we walked in, Matthew was already there. It was the first time I had seen him in almost 2 months. He looked different. Thinner, with deep dark circles, his hair grayer than I remembered. He was sitting with his lawyer, a young man in an ill-fitting suit who was shuffling papers with a nervous expression. Our eyes met for a second. In his, I saw something that surprised me. It wasn't hate. It was sadness. A deep sadness, as if he finally understood that this was real, that he had lost something he could never get back. I looked away first. I sat with Gregory on the opposite side of the room. Chloe wasn't there. Gregory had warned me she probably wouldn't come, that she wasn't legally required to since the lawsuit was only against Matthew. But her absence spoke volumes. She had left my son to face the consequences of their joint decisions alone. The judge entered at 10:30. She was a woman in her 50s, with short hair and an expression that revealed nothing. She sat, reviewed the documents, and began. We are here for the case of Olga versus Matthew. Complaint for damages to private property. Mr. Gregory, you may begin. Gregory presented the case with surgical precision. The photographs of the damage projected onto a large screen. The inspector's report. The original quotes proving Matthew had planned $120,000 in work without authorization. The power of attorney I found as evidence of attempted fraud. Every word, every document, every photograph built an irrefutable case. I watched as the judge's expression changed subtly. A slight frown when she saw the destroyed walls. An almost imperceptible shake of her head when Gregory showed the blank power of attorney. Then it was Matthew's lawyer's turn. A kid who couldn't have been older than 30, clearly out of his league, trying to argue that his client's intentions were good, that he just wanted to improve the family property, that the misunderstanding got out of hand. My client acted with the well-being of the entire family in mind, including his mother, he said, in a voice that tried to sound convincing. The planned improvements would have significantly increased the property's value. The judge cut him off. Did your client have written authorization from the owner to perform these improvements? No, Your Honor. But did he consult with the owner before starting the work? The family circumstances are complex. Answer the question, yes or no. No, Your Honor. Continue. The young lawyer tried to change focus, to talk about broken family relationships, generational misunderstandings, about how a mother was destroying her son out of pride. But every argument sounded more desperate than the last. Then it was my turn to testify. I approached the stand. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Saturday. I took a deep breath. I looked at the judge, avoiding Matthew's eyes. Gregory asked me the questions we had practiced. I told the whole story. How I bought the house, how much it cost me, what it meant to me, how I arrived to find the unauthorized work. The conversation with Matthew, where he informed me they were moving in permanently. The power of attorney they planned for me to sign. My voice didn't shake. I didn't cry. I presented the facts with the same professional clarity I used at the hospital when reporting on a critical patient's status. Then it was Matthew's lawyer's turn to cross-examine me. Mrs. Olga, is it true your son visited you frequently before this incident? Yes, every 2 or 3 months. And that you had a good relationship? I thought we did. Now I see I was mistaken. Don't you think you're being too hard on your only son? That $35,000 is an amount that could ruin him? I think $35,000 is what it costs to repair the damage he caused. I didn't choose that amount. His actions did. But he's your son, and this is my house. A house I bought with 40 years of work. He is my son, but that doesn't give him the right to take what isn't his. Did you ever consider just forgiving him? Letting it go without consequences? I considered many things. But then I remembered that spending years teaching him that actions don't have consequences is exactly what got us here. I saw Matthew lower his head. His shoulders shook slightly. He was crying silently. Part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, wanted to get up and hug him, to tell him it would be okay, that I forgave him, that I would drop the lawsuit. But I didn't. Because loving him also meant letting him face the consequences of his decisions. It meant not rescuing him one more time. It meant allowing him to grow up, even if the growing hurt. The cross-examination continued for 20 more minutes. But I answered every question with the same calm. The lawyer finally gave up, and I was allowed to step down. Gregory presented his closing arguments. Matthew's lawyer did the same, with less conviction than when he started. The judge took 15 minutes to review everything. The silence in the room was absolute. You could only hear the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustle of paper. Finally, she spoke. I have reviewed all the evidence presented. The damages to the property are extensively documented. There was no written authorization for the work performed. The attempt to obtain a power of attorney under questionable circumstances is particularly troubling. She paused. She looked directly at Matthew. Mr. Matthew, regardless of your intentions, you caused significant damage to a property that does not belong to you. The fact that it is your mother's property does not absolve you of legal responsibility. Another pause. I find in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay the amount of $35,000 in compensation for damages. You have 6 months to make the payment in full, or a lien will be placed on your assets. The gavel struck the desk. The sound echoed in the room like a thunderclap. I had won. But looking at my son, his head in his hands, crying silently while his lawyer spoke to him in a low voice, I felt nothing like victory. I only felt the weight of a relationship that had died that day in that cold courtroom, and the certainty that there was no going back. I left the courthouse in silence. Gregory walked beside me, satisfied with the result, talking about the next legal steps to ensure collection of the judgment. I barely heard him. My eyes were still seeing the image of Matthew with his head in his hands. Destroyed. Olga, are you okay? Gregory asked when we reached the parking lot. Yes, just tired. You won. This is what we wanted. I know, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like closing a book I never wanted to finish. The drive back was quiet. Gregory tried to make conversation a couple of times, but eventually understood I needed to be alone with my thoughts. We arrived at the house at 4 in the afternoon. The work was completely finished. Vince and his team had left everything spotless before they left. I walked in slowly. The kitchen gleamed with its new cabinets and shining floor. The master bedroom was perfect, with the soft peach-colored walls and my grandmother's armoire restored to its place. Everything was better than before. Perfect, empty. I sat in the olive-green armchair, and for the first time in months, I let the tears come freely. I cried for the family I lost, for the son I thought I had, who turned out to be a stranger, for the years wasted believing that sacrifice earned gratitude. The phone rang. It was Lydia. How did it go? I won. $35,000. 6 months to pay. Olga, that's good. It's justice. Then why doesn't it feel like it? Because you're a mother. And even though he betrayed you, even though he hurt you, you still love him. That doesn't go away with a court judgment. I should hate him, but you don't. And that makes you human, not weak. We talked for an hour. Lydia told me stories from the hospital, meaningless gossip, everyday things that anchored me back to reality. When we hung up, I felt a little better. Not good, but better. That night, I made dinner for the first time in weeks. Simple pasta with tomato sauce, a salad, toasted bread. I ate on the deck, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks as the sun sank into the horizon. Over the next few days, I tried to establish a new routine. Morning walks on the beach, reading in the afternoons, calls with Lydia and Clara, trying to fill the void with activities, with movement, with anything to distract me from the deafening silence. 2 weeks after the trial, I received a certified envelope in the mail. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a check, $15,000, and a handwritten letter on crumpled paper. Mom, this is all the money I could get for now. I sold my car, took out loans. I asked everyone I could for help. I will pay the other $20,000 in monthly installments over the next few months. I know you don't believe me, but I will. Not because the law is forcing me, but because I need to prove to you that I still have some dignity. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust. And I know you'll probably never forgive me. But I need you to know that I get it. I understood that what we did was wrong, that we were selfish, manipulative, and cruel. Chloe and I are getting a divorce. She never accepted that what we did was wrong. She still blames you for everything. I was finally able to see the truth. I worked my whole life with the expectation that your property would one day be mine, and it made me feel entitled to it ahead of time. I never valued your effort, because I always saw your achievements as my future inheritance. You were right about everything, and I am deeply sorry I put you through this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I am paying and that I finally learned the lesson. Your son, Matthew. I read the letter 3 times. The words blurred through the tears that fell onto the paper. It wasn't a full apology. It didn't erase the damage, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was a start. I put the check away. I put the letter away. And for the first time, I considered the possibility that maybe, in some distant future, there could be something like forgiveness. But not now. Not yet. The following week, Matthew kept his word. Every month, a check arrived. $1,000. Sometimes $1,500 when he could manage more. Never with a letter. Just the money and a brief note. Month 1, month 2, month 3. I deposited each check and kept the notes in a box. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I simply received and waited. The story eventually faded from social media. Other controversies, other dramas took its place. People forgot, as they always do. But the people close to me didn't forget. Lydia and Clara continued to visit regularly. Other former colleagues from the hospital started coming by, too. The beach house became a gathering place for women of my generation, all with similar stories of complicated families, of violated boundaries, of having to choose between being loved and being respected. We shared coffee, stories, laughter, and in those gatherings I found something I didn't expect. A new family. A chosen one, not one imposed by blood. 6 months after the trial, the debt was paid. Matthew had fulfilled every last cent. The last check came with a longer note. Mom, today I finished paying what I owed you. I know the money doesn't repair the emotional damage, but it was the only tangible thing I could do. I've been in therapy these past few months, working on understanding why I acted that way, why I felt so entitled to your life. I'm better, different. I'm not asking you to believe me, only that someday, if you want, you give me the chance to show you. I'm going to respect your space. I won't call or visit unless you ask. But I want you to know that I understood. I finally understood that being your son didn't give me rights over your life. I love you, Mom, even if I don't have the right to say it anymore. Matthew. I put the letter with the others. The box was full now, of notes, cash checks, evidence of a debt paid. That night, I went out to the deck with a glass of wine. The sea was calm, reflecting the full moon like a liquid mirror. I thought about the entire journey. The pain, the betrayal, the legal battle, the loneliness. And I realized something fundamental. I had survived. More than that, I had prevailed. Not because I had won money or a court judgment, but because I had kept my dignity intact, because I had chosen to respect myself, even when it meant losing the people I loved. The house no longer felt empty. It felt mine, completely, absolutely mine. Every corner, every wall, every window, paid for with my effort, defended with my courage, inhabited by my peace. And that, finally, was enough. A year after the trial, everything had changed, and nothing had changed. The house was perfect, restored, full of light. I was still there, living my life with a tranquility I hadn't known in decades. I had updated my will, just as Gregory suggested. Everything would go to the Retired Nurses Foundation, with ironclad clauses preventing any family member from contesting it. The house, the apartment in the city, my savings, all of it earmarked to help women who dedicated their lives to caring for others and deserved dignity in their old age. Matthew knew. Not from me, but because legal documents required notifying potential heirs of the changes. He never said a word about it, never asked for an explanation. He simply accepted the consequences of his decisions. We still didn't speak. He respected the space I had asked for. I respected his process of change from a distance. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it also wasn't the hate I once feared I would feel. It was simply acceptance. Acceptance that some relationships don't survive certain betrayals, and that's okay. One afternoon in October, almost 14 months after it all, I was on the deck reading when I heard a car park. I looked up, expecting to see Lydia or Clara. Instead, I saw the figure of Matthew getting out of a small car I didn't recognize. He looked different, thinner, his hair completely gray now, but with something in his posture I hadn't seen before. Humility. He approached slowly, like someone approaching a wounded animal, careful not to startle. "Mom," he said, when he reached the foot of the deck, "I know I don't have the right to be here. I know you asked for space, but I needed to tell you something in person." I didn't answer. I just looked at him, waiting. "I'm moving. I got a job in another city. It's a fresh start, a chance to build something without the expectations of the past. I wanted you to know before I left. When are you going? Next week?" I nodded. "I hope it goes well for you." "Me too." He hesitated for a moment. "And I wanted to give you this." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "It's not money, it's a letter. Read it when you want, or never, if you prefer. But I needed to write it." He placed the envelope on the deck table and turned to leave. Then he stopped. "One last thing. Thank you. For what? For not letting me get away with it. For teaching me the hardest but most necessary lesson of my life. For loving me enough to let me face the consequences." His voice broke, just slightly. "I was a terrible son, but you never stopped being a good mother, even when you had to hurt me to save me." He left before I could answer. I watched his car drive away until it completely disappeared. The envelope sat on the table for 2 days. Every time I walked by, I looked at it, but I didn't open it. Finally, one night after dinner, I did. The letter was 3 pages, handwritten. Matthew detailed his therapy process, The things he had discovered about himself, about how the expectation of an inheritance had turned him into someone who saw his own mother as a temporary obstacle rather than a person. He talked about his divorce from Chloe, about how she never accepted responsibility, and how that finally showed him that he had chosen a partner who reflected his worst qualities. But the last page was what made me cry. Mom, I spent my whole life expecting an inheritance, expecting you to give me things, expecting you to solve my problems. I never once asked what I was giving you. I never valued your company, your wisdom, your unconditional love. I only saw the material things. And when I finally lost everything, when I was left without the car, the marriage, the expectations, I found something I had never looked for: myself. I discovered that I can build my own life, that I don't need to wait for someone to die to start living. And that lesson, as painful as it was the greatest gift you could have ever given me. I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. But I need you to know that I respect you more now than ever. Because you had the courage to set boundaries when I had no courage to respect any. I love you, Mom. And this time, I mean it with no expectations attached. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the box with the others. I went out to the deck and stared at the sea for hours. Would I forgive Matthew one day? I didn't know. Maybe, with time. Maybe never completely. But at least now, I could think of him without my chest tightening in rage. That was something. The following months, I continued my routine. The gatherings with my friends became weekly. The house filled with laughter, with stories, with life. I started teaching first aid classes to young people in town, passing on decades of medical experience to the new generation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by my relationships. I wasn't Matthew's mother, or anyone's wife, or the nurse from the hospital. I was just Olga, a 72-year-old woman who had fought for her dignity and won. One afternoon, almost 2 years after everything, I received a text message from a new number. Mom, it's me. I know you asked for space and I've respected it. I just wanted you to know that I'm doing well. I have a stable job, a small apartment, a simple life. I've been debt-free for 6 months. For the first time, I'm actually proud of myself. You don't need to respond. I just wanted you to know. I love you. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Finally, I typed something brief. I'm glad for you. Take care. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't full forgiveness. But it was a bridge, a small, fragile one, but a real one. I put the phone away and went out to my favorite spot on the deck. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in colors that never repeated themselves exactly. Every sunset was unique, unrepeatable, beautiful in its own way, just like this life I had built. It wasn't the family I had imagined as a young woman. It wasn't the fairy tale ending where everyone forgives and lives happily ever after. It was something realer, more complicated, more honest. It was a life where I had chosen my peace over the approval of others, where I had defended my boundaries, even if it meant standing alone, where I had learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear. The sound of the waves filled the silence. But it was no longer an empty silence. It was a silence full of possibility, of reclaimed dignity, of lessons learned. For the first time in years, the sound of the waves wasn't competing with voices demanding what was never theirs. There was only the sea, the breeze, and me, finally free, finally at peace, finally home. On my wedding day, my son and my daughter-in-law mocked my new husband in front of 400 guests. They said he wasn't a stepfather. They said he was trash. My daughter-in-law's entire family laughed out loud while I felt the world crumbling beneath my feet. I stood up, trembling with rage, and kicked everyone out of the party. It was then that my husband looked at me with a calmness I had never seen before and said something that changed my life forever. Honey, I'm a billionaire. But let me tell you how I got to that moment. Because what happened next was something none of them ever imagined. It all started 3 hours earlier, when I, Barbara, at 61 years old, was standing in the most beautiful event hall I had ever seen. 400 guests filled every ivory velvet upholstered chair. The tables shimmered with cream silk tablecloths and centerpieces of white and gold flowers that looked like they were ripped straight from the pages of a bridal magazine. I had hired the best musicians, the best catering, all paid for with my life savings. I wanted that day to be perfect, because after 15 years of widowhood, of loneliness, of nights crying in silence, I had finally found love again. Robert was by my side at the altar, in his modest but impeccable gray suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his hands weathered by years of honest work. He wasn't rich. He didn't have a fancy car. He lived in a small apartment in a simple neighborhood. But when he looked at me, I felt like the most valuable woman in the universe. That was the only thing that mattered to me. Then I heard the first laugh. Loud, mocking, poisonous. It came from the third row, exactly where my son Jason was sitting next to his wife, Tiffany. He was 38 years old. He was wearing an Italian suit that cost more than $3,000. He wore a Rolex on his wrist and had always made it clear to me that money was the most important thing in life. Tiffany was worse. That 35-year-old woman, in her blood-red dress that was a size too small, her long nails painted black, and her attitude of superiority had made my life a living hell from the day she married my son. She came from a family that thought they were high society, even though we all knew her father had made his fortune with shady business deals. "Just look at that," I heard Tiffany whisper to her mother, but loud enough for me to hear. "The old lady is marrying a hobo." Her mother, a heavy-set woman with too much fake jewelry hanging from her neck, laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. "Poor Barbara. At her age, she can't get anything better." I felt my cheeks burning, but I kept my gaze fixed on the minister. Robert squeezed my hand gently, as if telling me everything would be okay. But things were just getting started. The minister continued with the ceremony, speaking about love, respect, and the sacred union of marriage. I tried to focus on his words, on this moment I had dreamed of for months, but the stifled laughter and cruel comments kept coming from where my own family was seated. "Did you see his shoes?" one of Tiffany's cousins whispered. "They look like they were bought at a flea market." "And that suit," another added. "My gardener dresses better." The entire row of Tiffany's family was snickering discreetly. They were like hyenas waiting for the perfect moment to attack. I felt my heart breaking into pieces, but Robert remained serene, dignified, as if none of it affected him. That gave me the strength to continue. The moment for the vows arrived. When Robert began to speak, his voice was steady and full of genuine emotion. "Barbara, from the day I met you, I knew you were the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I have no material riches to offer you, but I give you my whole heart, my eternal loyalty, and my promise to make you happy every single day I have left." Some people in the audience sighed, moved. I had tears in my eyes. But then I heard Jason let out a sarcastic laugh, loud and clear, that echoed through the entire hall. "This is pathetic," my son said aloud, without any shame. He stood up, champagne glass in hand, swaying slightly. He had been drinking since before the ceremony. "Seriously, Mom? This is the man you chose? This miserable old guy?" The hall fell into absolute silence. 400 people held their breath. The minister stopped speaking and looked at me with concern. Robert squeezed my hand tighter, but his expression remained calm, almost compassionate. "Jason, please," I tried to say, but my voice came out broken, humiliated. "No, Mom. Someone has to speak the truth here." Jason walked toward the center aisle, gesturing dramatically. "You worked your whole life. You sacrificed for me. Dad left you a nice inheritance, and this is what you do with it? Marry a nobody who probably just wants your money?" Tiffany stood up too, with a malicious smile on her lips. "Jason is right, Barbara. That isn't a stepfather. That's trash you picked up off the street." Her entire family burst into laughter. The mother, the father, the uncles, the cousins. Everyone laughing, pointing, pulling out their phones to record the moment. It was as if they were at a circus and we were the clowns. But then something inside me snapped. It wasn't sadness. It was fury, a burning rage that ran through me from head to toe. I let go of Robert's hand and walked directly toward my son. "You know what, Jason?" My voice sounded different, stronger, firmer than I had heard it in years. "You're right about something. Someone does have to speak the truth here. The silence in that hall was so thick you could cut it with a knife. 400 people watched me with wide eyes, waiting to see what poor, humiliated Barbara would do. My son Jason had that arrogant smile on his face, the same smile he'd used since he was a child when he thought he had won an argument. Tiffany was standing next to him, arms crossed, with that expression of superiority I hated so much. Her whole family kept snickering, enjoying the show as if it were the most entertaining thing they had seen in years. "The truth," I repeated, feeling every word leave my mouth with a weight I had never felt before, "is that I spent 35 years of my life married to your father. 35 years where I worked 12 hours a day cleaning other people's houses so you could go to the best private school. 35 years where I broke my back, destroyed my hands, sacrificed my health and my youth to give you everything you needed." Jason blinked, and for a second I saw a flash of discomfort in his eyes, but he hid it quickly by taking another sip of his champagne. "Your father was a good man," I continued, feeling tears beginning to pool in my eyes but refusing to let them fall. "But when he died 15 years ago, he left me alone, completely alone. Do you know how many times I came to your house asking you to spend time with me? How many times I called you crying because the loneliness was killing me?" "Mom, don't make a drama," Jason said, but his voice sounded less sure now. "Drama?" I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh, full of pain. "Drama is being alone every Christmas because you were too busy with Tiffany's family. Drama is spending my 61st, 60th, 59th birthdays completely alone because you wouldn't even dignify me with a text message?" Some people in the audience began to murmur. I could see faces of disapproval directed toward my son. But Tiffany wasn't going to stay quiet. "Oh, please!" she spat, taking a step forward with her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Always the victim, right, Barbara? Always complaining, always needing attention. You know what? Jason has his own life. He can't be babysitting you like you're a child." "Babysitting me," I whispered, feeling something inside me beginning to crack. I didn't ask him to take care of me. I just asked for a little love, a little respect, a little of the affection I gave him his entire life. Robert was still standing by the altar, observing the scene with a serene but attentive expression. He didn't intervene, didn't stop me. He simply stood there, giving me the space to say what I had held back for so many years. And now my voice trembled, but it remained strong. Now that I've finally found someone who makes me feel alive again, someone who treats me with dignity and respect, you come to destroy it? You come, my own son, to humiliate me in front of everyone. "Because that man is a gold digger," Jason shouted, pointing at Robert with contempt. "Look at him. Look closely. He dresses like a bum. He lives in a dump of an apartment. He probably doesn't even have a bank account. And I'm supposed to be happy that my mother is marrying that?" Tiffany's family applauded and shouted in support. "Exactly," yelled Tiffany's father, a fat man with a greasy mustache who always smelled of cheap cigars. "That miserable old man just wants your mom's money. It's obvious." "You should be grateful Jason worries about you," added Tiffany's mother, shaking her multiple gold bracelets ostentatiously. "He's just protecting your assets." My assets. The words left my mouth like poison. "Since when do you care about my assets, Jason? Since when do you care about anything that isn't your own benefit?" "That's not fair," he protested, but his face was turning red. "Not fair? Let me tell you what isn't fair. It isn't fair that when I needed $15,000 for surgery 3 years ago, you told me you didn't have any money, but 2 weeks later you bought that Rolex you're wearing. It isn't fair that when I asked to borrow $5,000 to repair my house, you made me sign a document with interest as if I were a stranger. It isn't fair that every time I asked for help, you treated me like a nuisance, like I was a burden." The murmurs in the audience grew louder. I could see people nodding their heads, others looking at Jason with critical eyes. My friends, the few I had invited, had tears in their eyes. Susan, my best friend of 30 years, was crying openly. But Tiffany wasn't finished. That woman never knew when to shut up. "You know what's really happening here, Barbara," she said, walking toward me with that attitude of superiority that made my blood boil. "You're desperate. You're old, you're alone, and you grabbed the first man who paid you any attention. It's pathetic. It's embarrassing, and frankly, My entire family is here as witnesses to the worst decision you've made in your life." Her whole family roared in approval. The cousins, the uncles, even the friends they had brought. Everyone laughing, everyone mocking. Some were recording with their phones, capturing every second of my humiliation to share later on social media. I could imagine the titles: "Crazy Old Lady Marries Hobo," or "The Most Pathetic Wedding of the Year." I felt something inside me finally break. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't pain. It was determination, a strength I didn't know I had. I turned around and walked toward Robert, who was still standing by the altar with that inexplicable calm. I took his hand and looked him in the eyes. "Are you sure you want to marry me?" I asked quietly. "Because my family is a disaster, and they clearly don't deserve to be here." Robert smiled. It was a small smile, but there was something in it, something I couldn't decipher. "Barbara, my love, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. And you're right. There are people here who don't deserve to witness this moment." I turned back toward the 400 guests. Most were good people, true friends, co-workers, neighbors who appreciated me. But there was a specific group that had turned the most important day of my life into a nightmare. "Jason," I said, and my voice resonated through the hall with an authority I had never used with my son. "You, Tiffany, and her entire family. Out, get out of my wedding, get out of my life." The silence that followed was deafening. Jason looked at me as if I had slapped him. "What?" he stuttered. "Mom, you can't be serious." "I have never been more serious in my life. I want you to leave. Now." Tiffany let out a hysterical laugh. "You're kicking us out? Us? Your own family?" "Not my family," I replied coldly. "You and your parasites, yes. You have 5 minutes to get out of this hall, or I'm calling security." Jason looked at me as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. His face went from shock to indignation in a matter of seconds. "You're kicking me out of your wedding? Me, your only son." "Yes," I answered without hesitating for a second. "I am kicking you out. You, your wife, and that whole family of vipers you brought with you." Tiffany stepped forward, pointing her index finger at me threateningly. Her black nails looked like claws ready to attack. "You can't do this, you stupid old woman. You have no right." "I have every right in the world. This is my wedding. I paid every penny for this event. I hired this venue, I hired the food, I hired the musicians, and I have every right to decide who stays and who goes. And you people are definitely going." Tiffany's father stood up from his seat, his belly protruding over his belt. "Who do you think you are to talk to us like that? My family has influence in this city. We can ruin you." "Ruin me then," I said, feeling a bravery I didn't know existed within me. "You already ruined the most important day of my life. What more can you do to me?" Tiffany's mother stood up too, clanking all her gold bracelets scandalously. "This is an insult, a total lack of respect. We came all the way here to support this ridiculous marriage, and this is how you repay us." "Support?" I laughed bitterly. "You call mocking my husband support? Calling him trash? Humiliating him in front of everyone? That isn't support. That is pure cruelty." One of Tiffany's cousins, a young guy with too much gel in his hair, yelled from his table, "Your husband is trash. We all know it. Just look at him. He looks like a hobo you picked up off the street." Several members of his family laughed and applauded. They were enjoying this. They were really enjoying destroying me on my own special day. Robert finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost kind, but there was a tone of firmness I had never heard before. "Young man, you don't know me. You know nothing about me, and yet you feel you have the right to insult me. What does that say about you?" The cousin shut up immediately, as if something in Robert's voice had disarmed him. But Jason wasn't going to give up so easily. He walked up to me, his breath smelling of alcohol and his face red with fury. "Mom, if you kick us out now, if you do this, you will never see me again. You will never see your grandchildren again. I swear to God." Those words hit me like a punch in the stomach. My grandchildren, Mason, 6 years old, and Harper, 4. I loved them with all my heart. The idea of never seeing them again was devastating. But then I looked at Robert. I looked at this man who had treated me with more respect and dignity in 6 months of dating than my own son had in the last 15 years. And I knew I had to choose. I had to choose my own happiness for once in my life. If that is your decision, Jason, I said, and my voice cracked a little, but I didn't stop. Then so be it. I am not going to let you manipulate me anymore. I am not going to allow you to use me as your personal bank while treating me like trash when you don't need me. You are selfish, Tiffany screamed, a selfish old woman choosing a stranger over her own family. He isn't a stranger, I replied calmly. He is the man I love, and if you people can't respect that, then you have no place in my life. Jason looked at me with so much hate he almost made me recoil. You're going to regret this. When that old man steals everything you have, when he leaves you on the street with nothing, don't come crying to my door asking for help. Don't worry, I said, feeling tears finally begin to roll down my cheeks. I won't. The atmosphere in the hall was one of absolute tension. The other guests watched the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. Some of my friends looked like they wanted to intervene, but stood still, not knowing what to do. Susan, my best friend, finally stood up. She was a 63-year-old woman with short white hair and a strong personality I had always admired. Jason, Tiffany, if you have any decency, you will leave right now and leave Barbara alone. What you are doing is cruel and unforgivable. You shut up, you nosy old hag, Tiffany snapped at her. This isn't your problem. It is my problem when I see my best friend being mistreated by her own family, Susan replied firmly. And honestly, after seeing how you behave, I perfectly understand why Barbara prefers to marry Robert. He has more class in his pinky finger than all of you combined. That infuriated Tiffany's family even more. They started yelling all at the same time, creating absolute chaos. Insults flew through the air. Some people started getting up from their seats. The hall that half an hour ago was a place of elegance and celebration now looked like a battlefield. Enough, I shouted with all the strength in my lungs. My voice echoed through the space, silencing everyone instantly. I am calling security right now if you don't leave voluntarily, I signaled to the venue manager, a tall, professional man who had been watching everything from the entrance. He nodded and began walking toward us with 2 security guards. We don't need to be thrown out, Jason said with disdain. We are leaving of our own free will. This place stinks anyway. And you, he pointed his finger at me, you disgust me. I hope you're happy with your decision, because you will never have your family again. Real family doesn't treat you like this, I replied, and I felt Robert move closer to me and take my hand, giving me strength. Tiffany grabbed her designer bag, the same one I had helped her buy last year when she asked to borrow $3,000 she never paid back. Let's get out of here. This wedding is a bad joke anyway. One by one, Tiffany's entire family began to get up from their seats. There were about 20 people in total. They gathered their things with exaggerated movements, making as much noise as possible, ensuring their exit was as dramatic as their behavior during the entire ceremony. This isn't going to stay like this, shouted Tiffany's father as he walked toward the exit. Everyone in this city is going to know what kind of woman you are. Let them know, I said with a calm that surprised even me. I don't care what they think anymore. As the procession of toxic people left the hall, some even pushing chairs and throwing napkins on the floor as a final act of rebellion, the rest of the guests remained in absolute silence. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Jason was the last to go. He stopped at the door, looked at me one last time, and said, "Goodbye, Mom. I hope your new life with that loser is worth losing your only son," and he left. The door closed behind him with a final sound that resonated in my heart like a definitive slam. I stood there, in the middle of the hall, shaking. I had just kicked my son out of my wedding. I had potentially broken my relationship with him forever. I had just lost access to my grandchildren, the only innocent creatures in this entire horrible situation. Tears fell freely down my face now. My makeup was ruined. My champagne-colored dress had tear stains. The happiest day of my life had turned into an absolute nightmare. Then I felt Robert's arms surrounding me. He hugged me with such tenderness, with such strength, that for a moment I felt everything would be okay. "I'm so sorry, honey," I whispered against his chest. "I ruined everything. I ruined our wedding." "You didn't ruin anything," he said softly, stroking my hair. "You did the right thing, the brave thing. And I am so proud of you." We stayed like that for a moment, hugging in the middle of the chaos that had been left behind. The other guests began to applaud slowly. First Susan, then other friends, until the entire hall was clapping. It wasn't applause of celebration. It was applause of support, of solidarity. Robert separated gently from me and took my hands. He looked me in the eyes with an intensity I had never seen before. "Barbara, my love, there is something I need to tell you." "What is it?" I asked, wiping my tears. He took a deep breath, as if he were about to reveal something important. "I am not who you think I am." My heart stopped for a second. What did that mean? After everything that had just happened, did he have a secret too? "Robert, what are you saying?" My voice trembled. He smiled, but it was a strange smile, sad and happy at the same time. "Honey, I'm a billionaire." I stared at him as if he had spoken in another language. The words had left his mouth, reached my ears, but my brain refused to process them. "What did you say?" "I am a billionaire, Barbara," Robert repeated with absolute calm. "I have over $2 billion in assets, properties in 12 countries, companies, investments, everything." I felt my legs beginning to give out. Susan ran toward me and held me by the arm. "Barbara, breathe, breathe, friend." But I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Everything that had happened in the last hour, the humiliation, the pain, kicking out my own son, and now this. "I don't understand. I don't understand anything. You live in a small apartment. You drive an old car. Your clothes. It is all a conscious choice," Robert said, and his voice was so gentle it made me want to cry again. After my first wife died 8 years ago, after seeing how everyone around me only wanted my money, I decided to live simply. I wanted to find someone who loved me for who I am, not for what I have. The hall was in complete silence. Everyone was listening to every word with absolute attention. This was more dramatic than any soap opera they had ever seen. "That's why you wear those clothes," I whispered, beginning to understand. "That's why you live in that place. That's why you never let me pay when we went out." "Exactly," he nodded. "And I found exactly what I was looking for. I found you, Barbara. A genuine woman with a good heart who treated me with respect and affection even when she thought I had nothing to offer except my love." Tears returned to my eyes, but this time they were different. They weren't tears of pain or humiliation. They were tears of something I couldn't name yet. "Why tell me now? Why here, after all this?" Robert looked toward the door where Jason and Tiffany had left minutes before. "Because I wanted you to see who they really are. I wanted you to see their true character when they thought I was nothing. And I wanted you to make your own decision about them before knowing the truth about me." "My God," I whispered, bringing my hands to my face. My son just insulted and humiliated a billionaire." "Your son just insulted and humiliated the man you love," Robert corrected gently. "The money shouldn't change that." He was right. He was absolutely right. But my mind kept spinning, processing this impossible information. $2 billion? How? From where? Robert smiled, and for the first time, I saw a flash of pride in his eyes. "I started with nothing, just like you. I worked in construction for 20 years. I saved every penny. I invested in real estate when no one else did. I bought properties everyone said were worthless. I built an empire brick by brick. But when my wife, my beloved Letitia, died of cancer, all that money meant nothing. I couldn't save her. I couldn't make her stay with me one day longer." His voice cracked at the end, and I saw genuine pain in his eyes. This man had suffered. He had loved and lost, just like me. "After her death," I continued, "everyone around me changed. My friends only called me when they needed money. The women who sought me out only saw dollar signs. My own in-laws tried to sue me for the inheritance. I realized that money had poisoned all my relationships, so I decided to disappear from the radar. I kept my businesses, but I changed my lifestyle completely." Susan was still by my side, holding me, but even she was slack-jawed listening to this story. "Meeting you, Barbara." Robert took my hands in his. "It was like living again. You treated me with dignity. You listened to me when I spoke. You laughed at my bad jokes. You cooked me your homemade food. You invited me to your home without caring that my clothes were old or my car was rusty. You loved me for who I am. I don't know what to say, I stuttered. My world had been completely turned upside down in less than 2 hours. You don't have to say anything now, he said, caressing my cheek tenderly. I know it's a lot of information. I know all this is overwhelming, but I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that you made the right decision, that defending our love, defending our relationship, was worth it. Suddenly, everything began to fit in my mind like pieces of a puzzle. The small details I had noticed but never questioned. The way Robert always seemed so self-assured, the way he talked about business with deep knowledge, the times he had casually mentioned traveling the world, his education, his vocabulary, his way of carrying himself. Everything made sense now. Did anyone else know? I asked. Did anyone know the truth about you? My lawyer, Charles, Robert replied. He is here today, in row 12. He has been handling my affairs for the last 8 years. I asked him to come to our wedding as a witness. I looked toward row 12 and saw a distinguished man of about 50, dressed in a clearly expensive suit, nodding when our eyes met. He looked like someone important. How had I not noticed him before? And what happens now? I asked, feeling completely lost. What does all this mean for us? Robert smiled at me with that same love I had seen in his eyes from the first day we met. It means that now we can start our life together without secrets. It means I can give you everything you deserve. It means you will never have to worry about money, about security, about anything ever again. But more important than all that, he squeezed my hands tighter. It means I found someone who truly loves me, and that is worth more than all the millions in the world. Tears fell down my face freely now. I couldn't control them. Everything was too much. The emotion, the shock, the revelation, everything mixed into a whirlwind of feelings I couldn't process. Susan hugged me tightly. Friend, I always told you this man was special. I always knew it. Other guests began to approach, offering words of support and congratulations. But I was still in a state of shock, trying to process this new reality. There is something else you should know, Robert said softly. The money your son Jason lent you with interest, the $5,000. I already paid it without you knowing. I deposited the full amount into his account 3 months ago. What? My voice sounded like a squeak. I didn't want you to have that debt on your shoulders, but I asked Charles to do it anonymously. I wanted to see if Jason would mention it to you, if he would return the money or tell you the debt was settled. He never told you anything, did he? I shook my head slowly, feeling a new wave of betrayal hit me. He never told me anything. In fact, 2 weeks ago he called me, asking when I was going to pay him. Robert sighed sadly. I imagined so. That's why I needed you to see his true character before we got married. I needed you to know exactly who you were dealing with. Then it all made sense. The test. It had all been a test, not for me, but to reveal the true nature of the people around me. And everyone had failed spectacularly. My son, I whispered, feeling my heart breaking again. My own son was scamming me. I am so sorry, love, Robert said, hugging me. I know it hurts. I know it's devastating. But it was better that you knew now than to keep living in ignorance. He was right. Of course he was right. But that didn't make it hurt any less. My only son, the baby I had carried in my womb for 9 months, the boy I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, had been stealing from me. He had been lying to me. He had been using me. And today, at my wedding, he had shown his true face. What do we do now? I asked, feeling completely exhausted. Robert looked me in the eyes with determination. Now we continue with our wedding. Now we get married surrounded by the people who truly love and support us. And after we start our new life together. The minister, who had remained silent during all the drama, approached us with an expression of genuine compassion. He was an older man, about 70, with decades of experience officiating weddings, but even for him, this had been extraordinary. Do you wish to continue with the ceremony? He asked gently. I looked at Robert. I looked at the hall full of people who had witnessed my humiliation and my defense. I looked at Susan, who smiled at me with tears in her eyes, and I knew the answer. Yes, I said with a firm voice. Yes, we want to continue. The next few minutes were a whirlwind of emotions. The minister resumed the ceremony where we had left off. This time, There were no interruptions. There was no cruel laughter. There were no hurtful comments. There was only love, support, and a completely different energy in the atmosphere. When Robert put the ring on my finger, I felt like I was starting a completely new life. And when they pronounced me his wife, the hall erupted in genuine, sincere applause. I kissed my husband, and in that moment, all the pain of the last few hours vanished momentarily. I was happy. I was married to the love of my life, and nothing else mattered in that instant. The reception was beautiful. Without the toxic presence of Jason, Tiffany, and her family, the atmosphere transformed completely. People danced, laughed, celebrated with true joy. My friends constantly came up to congratulate me and tell me how brave I had been. Some even admitted they had always thought Jason treated me poorly but had never dared to tell me. During dinner, Robert stood up and asked for everyone's attention. The hall went quiet. "I want to thank everyone who stayed today," he began, his voice resonating with natural authority. "You have witnessed something very difficult, but also something very important. You have seen an incredible woman defend her dignity and her right to be happy, and I want you to know that I feel honored to be her husband." Applause filled the hall. Robert continued, "I also want to clarify something. Some of you heard my confession a while ago, and I know many have questions, so let me be completely transparent. I am the founder and owner of Pacific Construction, one of the largest real estate development companies in Latin America and the U.S. There was a collective gasp. Pacific Construction was legendary. They had built some of the most iconic buildings in the region. Luxury hotels, malls, residential complexes. I myself had cleaned some of those buildings when I worked in janitorial services. The reason I never mentioned it," Robert continued, "is because after losing my first wife, I realized money attracted the wrong people. I wanted to find true love, not interest. And I found it in Barbara. This woman loved me when she thought I was a simple retired worker. She gave me her heart without expecting anything in return. And that, my friends, is priceless." He took my hand and lifted me up to stand beside him. "So now, I want to promise her in front of all of you that I will dedicate the rest of my life to making her happy, giving her everything she deserves, and protecting her from anyone who tries to harm her." The ovation was deafening. Susan was weeping openly. Other friends hugged each other emotionally. It was as if everyone shared my happiness in a deep, genuine way. But amidst all that joy, my mind kept returning to one image: Jason's face when he left the hall. The rage, the contempt, the absolute certainty that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. And I wondered, what would he be thinking now? Would he have heard the rumors about who Robert really was? Would he know by now that he had insulted and humiliated a billionaire? As if Robert could read my thoughts, he leaned toward me during the dance and whispered, "I know you're thinking about him. It's normal. He's your son." "I can't help it," I admitted. "Despite everything he did, he is still my son, and it hurts. It hurts a lot." "I know, honey, and I don't expect that to change overnight. But I want you to know something. The fact that he is your son doesn't give him the right to mistreat you. Family love shouldn't include abuse, manipulation, or humiliation." He was right. I knew it in my heart. But a mother's heart is complicated. You can know your child has hurt you deeply and still love him. You can recognize his toxicity and still miss him. It is a painful contradiction that only mothers completely understand. The party continued late into the night. We danced, ate cake, toasted with champagne that probably cost more than I earned in a month when I cleaned houses. Everything was surreal. This morning I had woken up as Barbara, the 61-year-old woman who had worked hard all her life to survive. Now I was going to sleep as Barbara, the wife of a billionaire. When we finally retired to the bridal suite Robert had reserved at the most luxurious hotel in the city, I felt overwhelmed by everything. The room was bigger than my entire apartment. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire lit-up city. A huge bed with sheets that probably cost thousands of dollars. A marble bathroom with a tub that looked like a small pool. "Are you okay?" Robert asked, taking off his jacket. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my champagne-colored dress. "Honestly, I don't know. I feel like I'm in a dream, or maybe a nightmare, or both at the same time." Robert sat next to me and took my hand. I know it's a lot to process. Everything changed in a matter of hours. But I want you to know something very important, Barbara. Nothing between us has changed. I am still the same man you met 6 months ago. The same man who fell in love with your laugh, your kindness, your strength. The money is just money. It doesn't define who I am, but it changes everything, I whispered. It changes absolutely everything. It doesn't have to, he insisted. We can keep living simply if that is what you want. Or we can enjoy some comforts. You decide. This is our life now, our decision. I looked him in the eyes and saw the same tenderness I had always seen, the same gentleness, the same love. And I realized he was right. The money hadn't changed him. He was still Robert, my Robert. I want to ask you something, I said after a moment of silence. Why me? Of all the women you could have chosen, why did you choose a 61-year-old widow with a problematic son and a complicated life? Robert smiled, and it was that smile that made my heart melt. Do you remember the day we met? I nodded. It had been at the local grocery store. I was buying vegetables, trying to find the cheapest ones. He was in the same aisle, and our carts had collided accidentally. You apologized like 5 times, Robert recalled with a smile. And then, when you saw a tomato had fallen from my cart and rolled under a shelf, you got down on your knees to pick it up. You knelt down, with your bad knee that always bothers you, to pick up my tomato. And when you handed it back and I thanked you, you smiled at me with such warmth, with such genuine kindness, that I knew in that moment you were special. I didn't remember that detail about the tomato. It had been such a small, insignificant gesture. After that, he continued, we started running into each other regularly at the store, always on Thursday mornings. And every time I saw you, I learned something new about you. Your patience with the clerks, your generosity with the kids selling candy outside, the way you greeted everyone with respect, no matter who they were. I saw your soul, Barbara, and I fell in love with it. Tears began to fall down my cheeks again. It seemed I hadn't stopped crying all day. So yes, said Robert, wiping my tears with his thumbs. Of all the women I could have chosen, I chose you, because you are real, because you are good, because you make me feel alive again. We kissed, and in that kiss was a promise of a future together, no matter what challenges came. But even in that perfect moment, in that luxurious room, with my new husband by my side, a part of me couldn't stop thinking about Jason, about how he would react when he found out the whole truth, about if we could ever repair our relationship, and if I really wanted to try after everything he had done. I woke up the next morning in that huge bed, wrapped in sheets that felt like clouds. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. The wedding, the humiliation, Robert's revelation. But then I turned my head and saw him there, sleeping peacefully beside me, and I knew it was all real. Everything had happened. My life had changed forever in 24 hours. I got up carefully, so as not to wake him, and walked toward the giant windows. The city stretched out below us, bathed in the golden light of dawn. From this height, everything looked so small, so insignificant, and I wondered if this was how Robert saw the world from his position of power and wealth. Good morning, my love, I heard his voice behind me. I turned and saw him sitting up in bed, hair messy and a soft smile on his face. Good morning, I replied, feeling a mix of happiness and anxiety. I couldn't sleep anymore. Understandable. Yesterday was an intense day. He got up and walked toward me, wrapping me in a hug from behind. What are you thinking about? Everything, I admitted. About Jason. About what happened. About what comes next. Robert kissed my head softly. I have something to show you. Something I think will help you better understand who I am and what our new life together means. Half an hour later, we were in a private helicopter. A helicopter. Never in my life had I imagined I would be flying in one. Robert handled the controls with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. I learned to fly 20 years ago, he explained when he saw my surprised face. It's useful for business and, besides, it gives me freedom. We flew over the city, and Robert began pointing out different buildings. That hotel there, the Grand Plaza, is mine. I built it 15 years ago. It has 400 rooms and is one of the most successful in the region. He pointed to another side. That mall, the Sunwalk Promenade, is also mine. And those 3 apartment buildings over there? And that industrial complex near the port. With every building he pointed out, my disbelief grew. He wasn't just rich. He owned significant parts of the city where I had lived my entire life. I had cleaned floors in some of those buildings, never knowing who their true owner was. Do you see that hospital? He pointed toward a modern building with a red cross on the roof. I donated it 5 years ago. My wife Letitia died of cancer, and the public health system didn't have the necessary resources. So I built a complete hospital dedicated to free oncology treatment for low-income people. That information hit me like a punch. Free? Completely free, he confirmed. No one should die because they can't pay for their treatment. Letitia had access to the best doctors in the world, and we still couldn't save her. But at least I can help others who don't even have that opportunity. I began to see Robert in a completely different light. He wasn't just a rich man. He was a man who used his wealth to do good, to help others, to build something meaningful. I also have foundations, he continued, as we landed on the roof of an impressive building. One for educational scholarships, another for social housing, and another for entrepreneurs who need starting capital but can't get bank loans. We got out of the helicopter and entered the building. It was the headquarters of Pacific Construction. The offices were elegant but not ostentatious. There were employees working in open, bright spaces. Everyone greeted Robert with genuine respect, not the servile fear I had seen in other places where bosses were feared. I want to introduce you to someone, Robert said, guiding me toward a large office on the top floor. Inside was Charles, the lawyer he had mentioned at the wedding. He was a distinguished man with silver hair and an imposing presence. Mrs. Barbara, he greeted me with a slight bow. It is an honor to finally meet you properly. Robert has spoken a lot about you over the last 6 months. Really? I asked, surprised. Of course, Charles smiled. He told me constantly that he had found someone special, someone genuine. And after what I witnessed yesterday at the wedding, I can confirm he was right. Robert signaled for us to sit. Charles, show Barbara the documents we prepared. Charles opened a leather folder and pulled out several papers. Mrs. Barbara, your husband has prepared some important documents. First, he has added your name to all his main bank accounts. You have full access to all his funds. My mouth dropped open. What? No, I can't accept that. We just got married yesterday. You are my wife, Robert said firmly. What is mine is yours. It's that simple. Furthermore, Charles continued, he has transferred ownership of 3 properties to your name: a beach house, an apartment in the city, and a ranch in the mountains. He has also established an investment fund in your name with an initial value of $50 million. I felt dizzy. $50 million. For me. A woman who had spent most of her life worrying about how to pay the rent every month. Robert, this is too much, I protested. I can't. Yes, you can, he interrupted gently. And there is more. I have also established trust funds for your grandchildren. Mason and Harper will each have $10 million available when they turn 25, specifically designated for their education, starting a business, or whatever they choose to do with their lives. Tears began to fall down my face. My grandchildren. Despite everything Jason had done, Robert was thinking about my grandchildren's future. Why? Was all I could say. Because they are innocent, Robert replied. Because they aren't to blame for their parents' actions. And because they are your blood, Barbara. They are important to you, so they are important to me. Charles continued explaining more details. There were life insurance policies, diversified investments, commercial properties. The amount of money was so astronomical my brain simply couldn't process it. Also, Robert said after Charles finished, I want you to know you have total freedom over how you want to live your life. If you want to keep living simply, we can do that. If you want to travel the world, we will do it. If you want to dedicate yourself to charitable causes, I will support you completely. This is your life now, Barbara. You decide how you want to live it. We spent the rest of the day touring his company's facilities. I met managers, architects, engineers. Everyone spoke of Robert with genuine admiration. He wasn't just a boss. He was a leader who cared about his people. He had created training programs, generous benefits, opportunities for real growth. My philosophy has always been simple, he explained as we ate in an exclusive restaurant on the building's top floor. If you take care of your people take care of your business. Many of my employees have been with me for over 20 years. I have seen them grow, start families, achieve their dreams, and that makes me happier than any amount of money. In the afternoon, when we returned to the hotel suite, I felt completely overwhelmed. I had seen and learned so much in a single day. My perspective on everything had changed drastically. "How are you processing all this?" Robert asked as we sat on the balcony with a glass of wine. "Honestly, I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me still feels like I'm going to wake up and it will all be a dream. Another part of me feels guilty." "Guilty? Why?" "Because while I struggled to survive, cleaning floors in buildings that were yours, you had all this power, all this wealth. It feels, I don't know, disproportionate." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that feeling. Inequality in the world is brutal and unfair. That's why I do what I do. The foundations, the hospital, the housing programs. I try to use my privilege to create opportunities for others. But you're right, it will never be enough. I can never completely compensate for the injustice of the system." "And Jason?" I asked, finally voicing the question that had been haunting my mind all day. "What happens with him?" Robert sighed. "Charles has been monitoring the situation. Apparently, your son and Tiffany are having some serious financial problems. They have been living beyond their means for years. They have massive debts. And now, after what happened yesterday, some of their business partners are distancing themselves from them." "How do you know all that?" I asked, surprised. "Because I asked for them to be investigated," Robert admitted. "Not to hurt them, but to understand the full situation. And what we discovered is worrying. Barbara, your son is on the brink of bankruptcy. He owes money to many dangerous people." I felt my stomach twist. "How bad is the situation?" "Very bad. He owes close to $2 million between bank loans, credit cards, and failed investments. And some of his creditors aren't exactly patient or legal." My heart sank. Despite everything Jason had done to me, he was still my son. The idea that he was in danger terrified me. $2 million, I repeated, feeling panic begin to take over. "How is it possible he owes so much money?" Robert took my hand. "According to Charles's investigation, Jason invested in several fraudulent businesses. He bought stocks in shell companies. He borrowed money at usurious rates to maintain his luxurious lifestyle. And Tiffany didn't help. She spends as if money were unlimited. Designer bags, jewelry, trips to Europe, all on credit cards that are already maxed out." I brought my hands to my face. My God. And here I am, with access to millions, while my son is sinking in debt. "Barbara, look at me." Robert lifted my chin gently so our eyes met. "Your son humiliated you publicly. He called you horrible things. He ruined the most important day of your life, and he did it when he thought I had nothing to offer you. Do you really believe he deserves your compassion after that?" "He's my son," I whispered, tears starting to fall again. "I know he treated me horribly. I know he was cruel. But he's still my son, Robert. I can't just turn off those feelings." Robert nodded with understanding. "I know, and I'm not asking you to. But you need to understand something. If you give him money now, if you rescue Jason from this situation, he will never learn. He will never face the consequences of his actions. And most importantly, he will never truly value your sacrifice." "But you said some of his creditors are dangerous. What if they hurt him? What if they hurt Tiffany? Or worse, my grandchildren?" "The kids are safe," Robert assured. "Charles already took care of that. We hired discreet security to watch them. No one will touch Mason or Harper, I promise you." That information gave me some relief, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't disappear. "And Jason? Are you watching him too?" "Yes, and here is where things get interesting." Robert leaned back in his chair. His expression became more serious. 3 days ago, Jason found out who I really am. A partner of his showed him a Forbes article where I appear on the list of the richest men in Latin America. My heart stopped. And what did he do? At first he didn't believe it. He thought it was a coincidence of names. But then he looked up photos and recognized me. Since that moment, he has tried to contact me 12 times. Calls, messages, emails. all through my company's official channels. And what did you do? Nothing. I ignored every attempt, but Charles saved all the messages. Do you want to hear what they said? I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I nodded anyway. Robert took out his phone and began to read. First message. Mr. Robert Sterling, I am very sorry for the misunderstanding at the wedding. I didn't know who you were. Please allow me to explain. He paused and looked at me. Notice how he says he regrets the misunderstanding, not his actions, as if the problem was that he didn't know I was rich. He continued reading. Second message. Sir, I am Jason, Barbara's son. I need to speak urgently with you about a business matter. I have a proposal that could be mutually beneficial. Robert let out a bitter laugh. He doesn't even mention his mother. He goes straight to asking for business favors. Third message. He continued reading. This one was sent last night. Mr. Sterling, I am going through a complicated financial situation. As your wife's son, I hoped we could speak as family. I am sure we can reach an agreement that benefits everyone, especially Mom. I felt nauseous. Is he using my name to manipulate you? Exactly. And there is more. Message number 7. Mr. Robert, I know I made mistakes at the wedding. I was drunk and wasn't thinking clearly. But I am Barbara's only son. The grandchildren she adores are my children. Do you really want to break that family relationship? I can make her happy if you help me solve my current problems. That is emotional blackmail, I said, feeling rage begin to replace concern. Absolutely. And the most recent message, sent this morning. Robert, I need $500,000 by the end of the week, or I will be in serious trouble. As my mother's husband, you have a moral obligation to help her family. I promise to pay it all back with interest. I trust in your understanding. I stayed silent for a long moment, processing everything I had just heard. My son hadn't called to apologize to me. He hadn't tried to repair our relationship. He hadn't shown an ounce of genuine regret. He only wanted money. He was just trying to use my marriage to solve his own financial problems. What do you plan to do? I asked finally. The question is, what do you want me to do? Robert replied. You are his mother. You are my wife. This decision affects you as much as me. I stood up and walked toward the edge of the balcony, looking at the city stretching out beneath us. Somewhere down there, my son was desperate, scared, probably planning his next move. Part of me, that maternal part that never disappears no matter how much they hurt you, wanted to run and save him. I wanted to give him the money and solve all his problems. But another part of me, the part that had been humiliated in front of 400 people, the part that had been used and manipulated for years, the part that had finally found the strength to defend her dignity, knew that would be a mistake. Don't give him the money, I said finally, my voice firmer than I expected. Not yet. Not like this. Robert walked over to me and hugged me from behind. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But I know it's the right thing. If we give him the money now, without real consequences for his actions, we will only be feeding his behavior. He needs to hit rock bottom. He needs to understand that he can't treat people like that and get away with it. It is a brave decision, Robert said, kissing my head. It is a painful decision, I corrected, but necessary. The next few days were an emotional roller coaster. Robert and I went on our honeymoon to a private island in the Caribbean that, of course, he owned. It was a paradise with white sandy beaches, crystal clear waters, and absolute privacy. I tried to relax, to enjoy this time with my new husband, but my mind kept going back to Jason. Charles kept us informed of the situation. Jason's creditors were starting to put on the pressure. They had repossessed his luxury car. They had frozen his bank accounts. The house where he lived with Tiffany and the kids was in foreclosure. And Tiffany? I asked during one of the video call updates. She left Jason 2 days ago, Charles informed, with his usual professional tone. She went to live with her parents and took the children. She filed for divorce yesterday morning. I felt a pang of pain for Jason, despite everything. Being abandoned by your wife, losing your children, facing financial ruin, all at the same time. It was devastating. And how is he? I asked. Not well, Charles admitted. Our contacts say he has been drinking heavily. He isn't eating properly. He has tried to contact several of his former friends and partners, but everyone has turned their back on him now that they know he is broke. How convenient, I muttered bitterly. There is something else, Charles continued. Jason tried to sell his story to the media. He called several newspapers and TV shows, offering an exclusive on how his mother married a billionaire and abandoned him in his time of need. What? I shouted, feeling rage invade me. Don't worry, Robert took my hand. Our PR team already handled it. No reputable outlet will touch that story, especially after we showed them the videos of the wedding where he publicly humiliates you. There are videos? I asked, surprised. Of course, several guests recorded the whole incident, and with your permission, we have used them strategically to protect your reputation. If Jason tries to paint you as the villain, we have clear evidence of who really acted poorly. I sat in silence, absorbing all this information. My son had fallen so low that he was trying to sell me out to the media. He was trying to use my happiness, my new life, as a way to make money and victimize himself. I think, I said slowly, I need to see him. Robert looked at me with concern. Are you sure that's a good idea? No, but I need to do it. I need to look him in the eyes and tell him exactly how I feel. I need that closure. 3 days later, I was standing in front of a dilapidated apartment building in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. It was an area I knew well. I had lived in similar places for years when Jason was small. The smell of dampness and trash filled the air. The walls were covered in graffiti, and the stairs creaked dangerously under my feet as I went up to the 3rd floor. Robert had insisted on accompanying me, but I asked him to wait in the car with the bodyguards, who now, apparently, were a permanent part of my life. This was something I needed to do alone. I knocked on the door of apartment number 32. I heard shuffling footsteps on the other side, and then the door opened slowly. What I saw broke my heart despite everything. Jason looked terrible. He had several days' worth of stubble, deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled and stained. The apartment behind him was tiny and messy, with empty alcohol bottles scattered everywhere. This wasn't the arrogant, well-dressed man who had humiliated me at my wedding. This was a broken man. Mom. His voice came out as a broken whisper. His eyes filled with tears immediately. Mom, you came. I came, I said, keeping my distance in the doorway. I wasn't going inside. I wasn't going to make things easy for him. Please, come in. I know the place is horrible, but, he started. But I interrupted him. I'm not coming in, Jason. I came to tell you a few things and then I will leave. His face crumbled. Mom, please, I need to talk to you. I need to explain. It's all been a nightmare. Tiffany left me, took the kids. I lost everything and what did you expect? My voice sounded harsher than I intended, but there was so much accumulated pain I couldn't contain it. Did you expect that after publicly humiliating me, calling my husband trash, trying to ruin the most important day of my life, everything would just stay the same? I was drunk, he tried to excuse himself. I didn't know what I was saying. If I had known who Robert really was, that's it, isn't it? I interrupted, feeling the rage grow in my chest. That's the truth? If you had known Robert as a billionaire, you would have treated me differently. If you had known he had money, you would have respected him. But because you thought he was poor, that he was worth nothing, you felt you had the right to treat us like trash. No, Mom, it's not like that, he stuttered. But we both knew it was exactly like that. Yes, it is, Jason. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. You didn't love me. You didn't respect my happiness. You only cared about money. You only cared about how my marriage affected you. Please, his tears fell freely now. Please, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I was jealous. I was scared of losing you, and I reacted in the worst way possible. Jealous? I repeated with disbelief. You left me alone for 15 years and you were jealous? You ignored my calls, my pleas to spend time together? You treated me like a personal bank and you were jealous? You're right. I'm a bear. I mean, a beast. You're absolutely right. I was a horrible son. The worst son anyone could have. But I'm paying for it now. I'm losing everything. I already lost everything. And the only thing I have left is you, Mom. You're the only thing I have left in this world. You lost me too, I said, and the words came out with a deep pain that pierced my chest. You lost me the day you decided your pride and materialism were more important than your mother. No, he moaned, falling to his knees. Don't say that. Please don't say that. I'll give anything to fix it. Anything. Anything? I asked, crossing my arms. Then why were all your messages to Robert asking for money? Why wasn't a single one of those messages a sincere apology to me? Why did you try to sell our story to the media? His face went pale. How do you know about that? I know everything, Jason. I know about your debts. I know about the illegal lenders. I know Tiffany left you. I know you tried to use my marriage to get out of your problems. I know it all. He stayed silent, still on his knees on the dirty floor of that miserable apartment. I'm desperate. Mom, I need $500,000 by Friday or very bad people are going to hurt me. People who don't play around. They've already threatened me twice. And you came to me, I said with a calm I didn't feel. Not because you love me, not because you value our relationship, but because you need money. No, it's not just for the money. I miss you, Mom. I miss having you in my life. I miss what, Jason? Miss having someone you can manipulate? Miss having a personal bank that never said no? Miss having someone who cleaned up your messes without complaining? I miss my mother, he whispered, and there was something genuine in his voice that almost made me waver. I miss how you took care of me when I was a kid, how you were always there for me, how you made me feel safe and loved. That kid doesn't exist anymore, I said, feeling tears beginning to sting my eyes. He turned into a man who values money more than people, a man who married a toxic woman and allowed her to poison our relationship, a man who used me for years and then humiliated me when I finally found happiness. I can change, he pleaded. Give me a chance, just one more chance, and I promise I'll be different. How many chances have I given you already, Jason? How many times did I lend you money you never paid back? How many times did I forgive you for canceling our plans? How many times did I swallow my pain when you treated me like I was invisible? And what did you do with all those chances? He had no answer. He just stayed there, on his knees, crying like a child. I'm going to tell you something, I continued, my voice trembling but firm. Robert wanted to help you. When he found out about your financial problems, his first instinct was to pay it all. $500,000 is nothing to him. He could write that check right now and not even notice it in his bank account. Jason's eyes lit up with hope. Really? Would he do that? He would, I confirmed. But I told him no. The hope on his face turned into shock. What? Why? Because if I rescue you now, you will never learn. You will never understand the real value of things. You will never value people over money. You will keep being the same superficial and materialistic man who treated me like trash. But Mom, they're going to hurt me. These men aren't playing. They've threatened me with death. I know, I said, and my heart was breaking saying the next words. And that terrifies me. Because despite everything you've done to me, you're still my son, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you. But I can't keep being your eternal savior either. I can't keep being the person who fixes all your problems while you never face the consequences of your actions. So what am I supposed to do? He shouted, his voice full of desperation. Just wait for them to kill me? You're going to do what any responsible adult would do, I replied. You're going to go to the police. You're going to report the illegal lenders. You're going to ask for protection. And you're going to start rebuilding your life from zero, the right way this time. The police can't do anything against these people. They're too powerful. They have too many connections. Then I'll give you something better than money, I said, taking a business card out of my purse. It was Charles's. This is Robert's lawyer. He is one of the best in the country. Call him. He will handle your legal situation, protect you from the lenders, and help you file for bankruptcy in an orderly way. Jason took the card with trembling hands. And then what? After I'm safe, you will come back to my life. That depends on you, I replied. It depends on if you really change, if you learn from this, if you can become the man I know you can be, the man I raised you to be. And my kids? Can I at least see them? Can they meet their grandmother again? That question hit me hard. Mason and Harper. I had missed them every day since the wedding. I will talk to Tiffany, I promised. But she doesn't owe me anything. If she decides she doesn't want me to see the kids for now, I'll have to respect that decision. She hates you, Jason said bitterly. She says this is all your fault, that if you hadn't married that old man, none of this would have happened. Of course she says that, I replied without surprise, because assuming responsibility would mean admitting her unsustainable lifestyle contributed to this situation. I turned to leave. But then Jason called me one last time. Mom, wait, just tell me one thing. Will you ever be able to forgive me? I stopped in the hallway and looked at him over my shoulder. I don't know, Jason. Honestly, I don't know. But I can tell you this. I want to be able to. I want to believe my son is still in there, under all that pride and materialism. So prove it to me. Prove to me that you're worth it. 6 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of our new house, a beautiful villa overlooking the ocean that Robert had designed specifically to my tastes. The sea breeze caressed my face while I drank my morning coffee and watched the waves breaking against the private beach. It was a life I had never imagined for myself, and yet, here I was, living it. My phone rang. It was Susan, my friend. Barbara, turn on the news, Channel 7, quick. With my heart racing, I turned on the TV. What I saw left me breathless. It was Jason, but not the destroyed man I had seen 6 months ago. He was in a simple but dignified suit, standing in front of a group of young people at what looked like a community center. A year ago, Jason was saying to the camera, I lost everything. I lost my house, my marriage, my money. But worst of all, I lost my dignity and almost lost my mother. Today I am here to tell these young people my story, not so you pity me, but so you learn from my mistakes. The reporter asked him questions about his fall and his recovery. Jason spoke openly about his debts, about how he had lived beyond his means, about how he had valued material things over the people he loved. My mother, he said, and his voice cracked a little, gave me the hardest but most important lesson of my life. She let me fall. She let me face the consequences of my actions, and at first I hated her for it. But now I understand it was the greatest act of love she could have given me. Robert appeared behind me and put a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay, honey? I don't know, I whispered, unable to take my eyes off the screen. The report continued showing how Jason had declared bankruptcy with Charles's help, how he had found a job at a construction company, starting from the bottom as an assistant. They showed his small but clean and tidy apartment. They showed how he now gave talks at schools and community centers about financial literacy and the consequences of materialism. And his relationship with his mother? Asked the reporter. Jason lowered his gaze. We are working on that. Slowly. She gave me her number 3 months ago, and we talk once a week. They are difficult conversations. There is a lot of pain to heal. But for the first time in years, I feel like we are being honest with each other. It was true. After he called Charles that day in his apartment, things had begun to change gradually. Charles had handled his legal situation brilliantly, reaching agreements with the lenders and protecting Jason from any violence. The bankruptcy had been humiliating for him, but necessary. 2 months after our meeting, Jason had sent me a letter. Not a text message, not an email, but a handwritten 10-page letter. In it, he detailed all his regret, his arrogance, his materialism, how he had allowed Tiffany to poison our relationship. But most importantly, he apologized. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't mention money. He just apologized, deeply and sincerely. That letter made me cry for hours. Robert held me while I processed all those complicated feelings. I gave him my phone number a week later. Our first conversation was clumsy, awkward, full of long silences, but we continued. Every week, without fail, we spoke for 30 minutes. And his children? The reporter continued on the TV. That is in process, Jason replied. Tiffany and I are in co-parenting therapy. It was something I suggested because I want my children to have functional parents, even if we aren't together. Is there any message you want to give to people going through similar situations? Jason looked directly at the camera. Yes, pride will destroy you if you let it. Materialism will consume you. And the people who truly love you, the ones willing to let you fall so you learn to get up, Those are the ones you must value more than anything in the world. I also want to say something to my mother, if she is watching this." My heart stopped. "Mom," Jason said, with tears in his eyes, "I know you are probably watching this. I want you to know that every day I work on being the man you deserved as a son. Every day I try to be better. I don't expect you to forgive me tomorrow, or next year, or ever if you don't want to. But I want you to know I understand now. I understand everything, and I love you. I have always loved you, even when I was too stupid and arrogant to show it." Tears fell down my face uncontrollably. Robert hugged me tightly. The next month, I received another surprise. Charles called to inform me that Jason had returned the money he owed, the $5,000 Robert had paid for me. "He worked overtime for 4 months to gather the money," Charles explained. That night, I sent a text message to Jason for the first time, just 3 words: "I'm proud of you." His response came 20 minutes later. That means more to me than any amount of money in the world. 2 weeks later, we met at a neutral coffee shop. It was awkward at first. There was so much to say, and at the same time nothing to say. But slowly, we began to talk. "Would you like to meet the kids again?" I asked cautiously. Jason's eyes lit up. "Really? Would you do that?" "They are my grandchildren," I said simply. I never stopped loving them. The reunion with Mason and Harper was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. Robert was wonderful with them. He taught them to swim in our pool, told them stories, showed them that wealth doesn't make you better than anyone. One day, while we watched the kids playing on the beach, Jason told me, "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom." "Parents never give up on our children," I replied. "But sometimes we have to let them fall so they learn to fly." Robert and I established a foundation in honor of his first wife, Letitia. The Letitia Foundation helped older women who had been abandoned by their families. It was my idea, born from my own experience. One night, exactly 1 year after our wedding, Robert and I renewed our vows. This time it was a small ceremony at our house, only with the people who really mattered. Jason was there, with Mason and Harper. When the moment for the vows came, Robert took my hands and said, "A year ago, I promised you eternal love without you knowing who I really was. Today, I promise it to you again, now that you know everything." After the ceremony, Jason approached Robert. "Mr. Sterling, I never apologized to you properly. You are a good man, and my mother is lucky to have found you." Robert extended his hand. "The past is the past, Jason. What matters is the man you are today." That night, lying in Robert's arms, I reflected on everything that had happened. A year ago, I had been humiliated on the most important day of my life, and now I had found not only love and security, but also purpose, dignity, and a peace I had never known before. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked. "That my whole life changed forever," I replied, "and that I wouldn't change anything that happened." "Why not?" "Because it led me exactly where I needed to be. It taught me who I really was. It gave me the strength to defend myself. And it brought me to you." Robert kissed my forehead. "You are the strongest woman I know, Barbara." "No," I corrected him gently. "I am a woman who learned to be strong when I had no other choice. And that makes all the difference."